There we go. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Movie Discussion Pocket Dimension. I'm Cole, with as always my friend and esteemed colleague Jay, and another late start, sort of becoming our trademark, but well, what you can do. And yes, in today's episode, and I have the movie too. It's funny, and it's rare that I have it. And last week we did Porco Rosso, which I actually own too, and I rather stupidly forgot to show it. I always feel like if I have the movie, I should show it. But yes, today's is definitely the definition of a cult film. Donnie Darko, a film with a fairly limited release that was nearly going to be, I think, a straight-to-video movie, and then got a very small window of time to go in theaters, and it didn't make a huge impact or anything at the time. Fairly, low-budget movie. I think it had a budget of like $4.5 million or something like that, and it did make a profit, but so you couldn't call it a flop or anything. But it was sort of like a little blip on the radar at the time, and then became sort of a cult thing as they'd have private screenings and things like that, and people, I guess maybe word of mouth, maybe some internet and stuff like that at the time. And we'll get into that about the timing of the release. It was the fall of 2001.
Oh wow! I didn't even realize that. Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, and it's been said that because it has to do with an airplane stuff, that it was
oh shit.
It was sort of a sensitive thing because of September 11th having been a very recent event and stuff, and so it's entirely possible that was one of the reasons why theaters were glad to yank it after only a few weeks or something.
Oh man, I feel really stupid now. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, yeah. I don't know why you'd be afraid to see a film with an airplane in it, but
I don't know either. It's amazing how people, it's not even that people get offended, it's the other people that fear offending people. A little side note, I remember there was a family that lives in my hometown with a German name, and the German name is Graber, and it's spelled Grahber. And years ago, their son, they were an older people, their son, who was, I don't know, in his 30s, 40s, whatever, older guy, he was getting, he wanted to get a special license plate with his name on it that said Grabber, and they wouldn't let him do it because it was too close to the word grabber, and they said that could be offensive.
Oh, grabber, okay.
It still doesn't even really make any sense, because let's think this through logically. You're on the street, you see a car, the license plate says grabber. You're one of the very rare people that finds that offensive. Then what? So what exactly? And okay, you were offended, and then not to go on a whole thing about offending people and stuff, but I mean, sometimes I just don't even understand. These people that are worried about it, they don't even think it through. Okay, so someone on the street saw the license plate, was offended by it. What happens then? I mean, does the world end? Are they going to let it bother them for the rest of? Does it ruin their day? I don't know. Being offended is just part of being a human. I always think of myself as being, pretty easygoing, but obviously there are things in the world and that have offended me. Even the odd movie, something has offended me, but that's life, No matter who you are, no one is entitled to a life free of being offended. It's just what happens.
I don't think it's actually the act of being offended is the problem. It's how you deal with it.
Mm-hmm. I just mean, but like I said, it just seems like a weird link to make, like you pointed out about, okay, something in real life happened with an airplane. This plot has something with an airplane, although it's quite different, and everything. It just seems like such a reach. I mean, I don't know what's worse, because I remember I've commented before about how people were upset. The 2002 Lord of the Rings movie, The Two Towers, people were ignorant enough to not even know about the books or anything. These books have been around forever, and they're like, I think it's really in poor taste that Peter Jackson is naming his movie going with The Two Towers. I mean, that's just
I mean, at least they didn't change it. I mean, that's one thing you could say about it.
I suppose that's true. But and also, but again, in the case of this movie, right, it doesn't have a huge. But maybe they didn't change it just because of the scope of the movie, and you can see why a little movie like this, made by it was a directorial debut and stuff. It had a small budget. It was very easy to give in to any sort of Richard Kelly, was the director, to give in to any sort of pressure, I guess, that might have been exerted about worrying about offending people. Oh my God. But yeah, there's so many movies from 2001, 2002 that had things altered or changed and stuff because of things to do with it. I remember, Schwarzenegger movie, what's it called? Collateral Damage.
Okay.
It's a whole opening sequence was supposed to be something different, and they rewrote the entire thing into something else. because of it was they thought it was too close to something that terrorists had done in real life. I don't know if that means it was the World Trade Center or something else, but possibly because it was. I think it's supposed to be in New York too. I just mean,
oh man, there was a lot of albums and movies that were completely overshadowed because that was everybody was glued to their televisions watching the coverage on that stuff. So
I bought an album by a band I loved in the 90s. I think this was their last album, at least for a long time, and it wasn't any good at this point, but there was an album called Golden State by Bush, and they had to completely change their cover because it was supposed to show like planes crashing or something. And, yeah, there's just a whole lot of stuff from like that era, like late 2001 going into 2002 when, September 11th was very fresh. It just happened and stuff. There were all sorts of things, album covers, movies, TV shows, where it was just a really sensitive thing, and a lot of stuff got changed or altered, or sometimes they didn't do it, or they just delayed the release sometimes to let more time pass. But in the case of Donnie Darko, it wasn't a movie that was necessarily going to get I don't know how these things work, but it wasn't going to be cleared for a wide theatrical release anyway. Then sort of at the last minute it was given one. But then, because of this, it only had a very short window, and it was only in theaters for maybe 2.5 weeks. It was a very short window, supposedly. I had no idea it was in theaters. I never saw it in theaters. It was a blip on my radar, that didn't come up until a couple years later. I probably saw Donnie Darko sometime in 2003 or 2004, probably. I certainly wasn't aware of it when it was released in theaters.
See, I think it may have been 2002 when I saw it for the first time on. Probably DVD, I guess. I'd already made the switch by then.
Yeah.
But this is actually one that I own. I think the first movie we've done on here that I actually own a copy of.
Yeah, I own it too. And like we said, it's a very popular movie. There have been 3 separate Blu-ray releases for it. This is the second one. This is the one that came out in 2010, the 10th anniversary edition. But there's an even more recent one that came out just like last year. It was 2016 or 2015. I don't know what's on it. That's not on this one. And then there was one that first came out in 2009. But this is, as far as I can tell, the same as if there's a 10th anniversary edition DVD. It's pretty much the same thing, except that this has, let's see, the movie on Blu-ray, and then the second disc is DVD, the third disc is DVD, and the fourth disc is the digital copy thing that you can do.
So there's 3 discs in there? Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's technically 4 if you count the digital copy, but it's a 4, but 3 discs. And there's all sorts of stuff on here that I wish, and as I was saying to Jay before the show, it's not like I didn't know we were heading into a holiday weekend. I should have planned more accordingly, so I could have, prepared a little more properly for the show. And I apologize to our viewers that I didn't watch as much stuff as I could have, because I kind of let things slide, and then over the weekend I simply didn't have time for this stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff on here. Most interesting, and I probably will watch just for my own interest and amusement after this, is that the director commentary on this disc is done by Richard Kelly and Kevin Smith. So that's kind of interesting that they have sort of like a guest person that had nothing to do with the movie to come in and do commentary on it. That's kind of a rare thing, at least to me it is.
Oh yeah, this one has that, and also one with Kelly and Jake Gyllenhaal in the theatrical version. Yeah,
I don't think I have the one with... Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, I have that.
I'm sure you probably do.
Yeah, and then the second disc has, like, there's a featurette on its cult status and stuff like that, and a few things like that. And then it's kind of redundant in the set that the third set has the stuff that would have been on the original 2-disc version, because if you got the theatrical cut, it came with extras on a second disc that were basically the deleted scenes. And as we're going to get into, in 2004, they released a director's cut, which basically just includes those scenes in the movie. And just to let people watching now know, Jay and I both viewed the director's cut for this. We didn't agree to that. It's just sort of how it worked out. And like I said, and I was saying, if I'd had more time, I would have watched both cuts, because they're quite different. Because the director's cut adds about 20 minutes and really alters the pacing of the movie, because suddenly the movie is a little more slow and deliberate because of the extra scenes. And I know that there's a tide of people out there that really don't like the director's cut, because they feel like the added stuff, particularly the stuff about that book that's in the universe, the time travel book. There's a lot of people that are upset about that, because they feel like that takes the subtlety out of the movie, that it's holding our hand too much. we'll get into it, but I mean, just to start off, I don't really feel that way because I think that's only for the cult people that have watched this movie over and over again. Because this is my first time watching the movie, and probably maybe a year or two at least, and I just didn't feel like it was all too obvious or in my face having that stuff. Because yeah, another one of the things that's going on is they would have superimposed excerpts from the book, just giving us a little thing, usually the start of a chapter, and it would sort of tie into what was going on, I guess. But I didn't mind it. I'll have to watch the theatrical cut again because it's been a long time since I watched it. But I don't think I have any objection to this. I like the added stuff for the most part. And another thing that happened is some of the music got moved around, or some of the music got changed because originally they didn't have the budget to get the licensing for some of the songs they wanted. Most notably in the opening scene, if you watch the director's cut, Jake Gyllenhaal's Donnie takes his bike back into his neighborhood. It's the In Excess song "Never Tear Us Apart," but in the original, it was an Echo and the Bunnymen song, and that wound up being flipped out for this. And too bad. Echo and the Bunnymen seems pretty appropriate given the movie. But we'll talk about the movie too. But people that watch me like on the Sausage Factory, stuff like that, sometimes I tear down the 80s for certain aspects of it and stuff. And there's things about the 80s that I don't like and cheesy. This is a rare movie that has a really 80s soundtrack, but it's kind of all like the 80s stuff I did like, because it doesn't have any of the annoying 80s pop that I didn't like, except for the Duran Duran song. And it didn't have any like hair metal or something like Bon Jovi. And like, yeah, and it features like In Excess is sort of the closest thing to like a big mainstream, big 80s band that I kind of liked. Whereas, I absolutely was not into like, say, Bon Jovi or Guns N' Roses and stuff like that. I would take In Excess over them any day. So just from my own personal taste, the soundtrack is kind of a cool sampling of the very kind of small part of 80s music I do like. And
yeah, it's so. Were you saying that there was some hair metal in the original movie?
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. No, that the song choices just skipped over it. Although apparently, which is kind of interesting, is in the theatrical cut it says, and I don't remember this at all. And this is one I wouldn't call hair metal, but the band. Now I have to look it up. The hair metal band. I always think of them more 90s, but they did start in the 80s. Oh man, that groove metal band. As they're sometimes called. Sometimes they're called groove metal. Aren't they the guys that did Walk?
Oh, Pantera's in there?
I think, yes. I think that Pantera, in the original version, not in the version we watched,
Really?
that the party scene had, where I can find it.
I should remember that. Damn.
That the party scene had a song by them. Oh man, I know I read this and I'm not crazy. Just let me go through here.
I definitely did not hear that in the director's cut. I watched that twice.
Because the party scene actually, I think, and this has nothing to do with this doesn't really have to do with, although I do prefer the song, I just think it's better. But I like that the party scene had, for that, they had Level Tear Us Apart, which I just thought was...
Joy Division.
Yeah, Joy Division, which I think was a really cool 80s song and really sort of fits the whole, 80s kids party atmosphere. But just to make sure...
It was right before they had sex, too, so I think it was really, really appropriate then.
Yes. But in the original version, the song was called Proud to Be Loud, a Pantera from their 1988 album, which would coincide with the setting of the film. And apparently, even if you get that original soundtrack, it doesn't even credit Pantera. It credits a band called the Dead Green Mummies. So that's interesting. But yeah, so there are a few times where just they also flipped songs around. And one of the ones I thought I don't like as much was when they come out of the bedroom after having sex in the theatrical cut. One of my favorite songs in the soundtrack, "Under the Milky Way" by the Church plays. But they swap it around in the director's cut, and I don't like how they use it because it's sort of too much in the background. Because at this point, it's early in the movie. He and his father are coming back from one of his appointments with his therapist, and there's something on the radio. He flips the radio off that station, and it starts playing that song. But it's very much in the background. You don't even hardly notice it while he and his father talk in the car, which I think is too bad because that's one of my favorite songs on the soundtrack. The Church, again, is another example, sort of a rare 80s band that I'm quite into. Australian fellows. And that song's like the song for like car commercials. If there's like especially if they want to give you like a night drive, that's one of those night drive songs. If you're going to go out in your car and you have a convertible or something, you want to go drive down the coast with the waves crashing, you'll probably play Under the Milky Way tonight. It's just basically for that.
I guess while we're talking about it, man, it's got a great soundtrack.
Mhm.
It takes place in '88, October of '88. So I think it really, and like you said, it's a really good. It's not bad music from that period of time. I don't think
And I don't mean to and I know there are people that, and I don't mean that that stuff's bad. I just mean I personally, there's a lot of that '80s pop and there's a lot of that
well,
'80s rock and sometimes hair metal that is not my thing, and I'm not trying to call it all bad. I'm just saying, just for my own personal taste, I just it's just sort of a lucky thing that it's almost all, like I said, the only song that's really featured prominently in there is a Duran Duran song, and I don't hate it or anything, but no, I would not say I like Duran Duran. But I mean, it's well used within the movie because it's for like a dance scene and stuff, so it makes sense. So it's not like it bothers me. But yeah, it's just that so many of these movies that have '80s soundtracks are full of like all these songs that a lot of people like, and they're like, oh, Journey and stuff, and I'm like, I don't care, It's not
this is like a lot of generally depressing music with a few exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So music you turn the lights off and like cry in your bedroom.
That's my sensibilities for sure.
Which is appropriate for the film. So I think it works really well.
To be honest, I never really grew out of that too much. I still like a lot of darker kind of mopier stuff, and it's funny. Like the one big band that's missing from that soundtrack from that is probably like The Cure. So
that's what I was going to say. That may have been a little bit earlier. Yeah, maybe a little bit earlier. I don't know.
And what's kind of cool is for when they introduce us the first time to the school, they have a song by Tears for Fears, Head Over Heels, playing, which is kind of neat because arguably the most famous song on the soundtrack is a Tears for Fears song, but it's because it's a cover, and that was made just specifically for the movie and came out that year. And I think 15, 16 years later, everybody knows it now. It's probably kind of overused. We see it and stuff, but it was. I don't know. It is definitely a rare example of like a cover basically kind of even reinventing the song, and most people would agree is really the better version, which I think is a very rare thing with songs. But I think for most people, like, it's not the Tears for Fears version of that song. It's the one for the movie that most people know and identify with.
What song you're talking about?
Oh, it's Mad World.
Oh, I didn't realize that was a Tears for Fears song.
Right. So when you're just done, like, YouTube it and watch it, and it doesn't seem right. Like, it doesn't seem right. Like, it's still the song, but this song. But yeah, this is, like I said, I think it's just one of those really rare examples of a cover actually being the more identifiable and kind of better version of the song, because it's more slowed down and the piano is very haunting and stuff. And the Tears for Fears version still is kind of like that, but as you'll see, it's quite different.
Man, yeah, I had no idea. I love that song. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect at the end of this movie. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it really fits so well.
But
this movie itself is kind of an enigma when you consider the level of what the director had done before this. I mean, essentially his first movie.
Yeah.
And what has he done since? I mean, I know we'll get into that later, but
very little.
Richard Kelly is, I don't know. Is this?
He did Holes, apparently.
Oh, he did Holes? Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Like right after this.
Really? I was looking at his.
But his most recent movie is that movie, The Box, which was the one with Cameron Diaz and James Marsden. I never saw it, but it was something, they open the box, somebody will die. Like not a good movie. And that was 2009. He hasn't directed a movie since.
I mean, Southland Tales is just god awful. I think
I've heard that.
I think Cameron, that was like one of his most disappointing movies ever. He mentioned on the Sausage Factory a few weeks ago.
Yeah, Southland Tales.
So hyped up about it.
Yeah. Speaking of disappointment, most people like myself who are consider themselves fans of Donnie Darko, we just do not acknowledge that they ever made a sequel. It doesn't exist. It never happened. As far as
I've seen it, but I couldn't tell you one thing that happens other than the sister is the same actress that plays her.
Davini Chase. However you say her name.
Is it Davini? Am I saying that right?
DeVay?
Oh, I wasn't. Okay.
Something like that. DeVay. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of things this movie is going for. One is how difficult it is to classify. I mean, It's like a drama, coming of age / sci-fi movie, which is a pretty rare thing in itself. Has a pretty cool cast. Jake Gyllenhaal.
Well,
I don't know how old he was at the time, but he plays a convincing enough teenager. Like sometimes you have these movies and they're supposed to be in high school and you don't buy it at all. It's
21.
it's sort of 50-50 for this movie. I think they definitely have some students that look too old, but then there's others that seem like they fit in
Oh
fine.
man, I'm the same age as Jake Gyllenhaal, and he would have been 20 or 21 when he made this movie.
Mhm.
He could have played 13, I think. Seriously, I mean, I don't know if it's just a testament to his acting ability or just a late bloomer or what, but
Yeah. But I mean, I guess he's supposed to be about 17 for this.
this is well, I mean, his sister, you can say, is maybe a year older than him. So if she was 17, he would be. I mean,
yeah, we have Maggie Gyllenhaal playing his sister in the movie, so we have real siblings playing siblings, which happens sometimes.
she is just stunning in this movie too, man. Like I don't generally find her that attractive, but she is just stunning in this movie.
Yeah, maybe it was before. I mean, I don't like saying this about actresses and stuff, but I always felt like she has kind of an unfortunate nose, and it's kind of really noticeable in some of her roles, and it doesn't seem to be in this one. I don't know if she aged into it more or something like that, but like in The Dark Knight, she seems like to have a very tight, hurt face. I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to fixate on things like this and be all sexist or anything like that. I'm just saying, like you said, she looks a lot better here. I don't know if it's makeup or just because she's a bit younger or whatever, but I did watch her recently in a movie. I hadn't watched, not to get on a tangent or anything, but I've watched Stranger Than Fiction, which I hadn't seen for a few years, and I still really enjoy that movie. She's in that. It's weird. Her as a love interest for Will Ferrell is usually the type of thing I would totally balk at, but I kind of like how they do in the movie because they are kind of making the point. The whole point is like he's the type of guy that she would, of course, hate and avoid and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I like Maggie Gyllenhaal. She's kind of gone under the radar lately.
Yeah, she's more like
Gyllenhaal seems to be a really big star. Like he's in lots of big things. And
I think she's still doing like a lot of indie stuff.
Seems to fit her personality.
I think she's raising a family and stuff too.
Right.
Bullshit.
So, Drew Barrymore is also in this movie. Patrick Swayze's in this movie. A young unknown Seth Rogen is in this movie. He has some silly lines.
Noah
Weil.
Jenna Malone, did you say her yet?
No, I didn't. And Jenna Malone, she's sort of like the perfect counterpart to I always forget his name. Patrick Fugit. In that the two of them, and of course they're in Saved together, and they both are, to me, he's like the male representation, she's a female representation of actors that I can't take seriously as adult actors. I only see them in their teenage roles. And because Jenna Malone plays, like, you see how many times she plays like a high school student or a teenager in a movie. Like, obviously she was probably in her early 20s and still doing it for a while, but doing it quite convincingly. Saved is one of those movies. That's 2004, so that's like, almost 3 full years after this movie, and she's still basically convincingly playing a high school student. I think she plays a high school student in the United States of Leland. I think she's in that too. And I always felt that way about Patrick Fugit. He had a few of those roles, and I think I've said to people, it kind of freaks me out and it puts me off balance seeing them as adults. Patrick Fugit has or is it Patrick? But anyway, Fugit has a fairly small role as a cop in what is it, that thriller Gone Girl, and it always sort of puts me off balance. I'm like, oh, there he's all grown up as an adult, and it doesn't seem right to me. I've just so used to seeing them as that. And I saw Jenna Malone in a recent movie, The Neon Demon or whatever, where she has a pretty amusing scene. You get to see Jenna Malone have sex with a corpse. That's pretty cool. But a female corpse, that's your thing. But I'm not getting your sound again, Jay. I'm not hearing you again. I'm not sure what happened.
She's like the Chloe Savini of the newer generation of.
Yeah, that's a good comparison for sure and stuff. But anyway, yeah. So Jenna Malone, yeah, I can think of like at least 4 roles where she's basically in that area, even if she herself has gotten older, where she's more or less playing a teenager, high school student, whatever. And she does it again to basically perfection here. So yeah, interesting cast. So to get into the movie, I guess. It's a hard thing to explain. I don't think we're going to go blow by blow for the plot, but it's set very firmly set in October of 1988, taking place throughout the month. It's a span of something like 20-some days. which is coincidentally about how many days of shooting the movie took, which was not on purpose or anything, but that's just how it worked out and stuff. So it's very, I guess it's set somewhere in Virginia, although I don't think it really matters. You get the feeling his family's kind of like an upper middle class type family. I think the school he goes to is a private school because they seem to wear uniforms and stuff. So it's fairly, kids with fairly well-to-do backgrounds, somewhat affluent, and you get a feel for that with the cars and stuff like that. Once again, it's a movie where I can in no way relate to the high school. That high school is nothing like the high school I went to. I didn't go to a high school that had any of the like so many of the things that show up in a lot of these movies. My high school didn't have like a nurse's office or anything like that, and security cameras, things like that. I don't know if they're really pointed out in this movie. In this movie, it's just more because of the uniforms and it just seems odd. Some of the classes he has, like he has Drew Barrymore plays a fairly young English teacher, and they kind of hit us over the head with it that she's young and wants to shake things up and do things a little differently and progressively and stuff. And she's got little odd idiosyncrasies. Like Jenna Malone, she's new to the area. She's the new kid. When she comes in, she's like, "Where should I sit?" Drew Barrymore is just like, "Well, you should just sit next to whatever boy you think is the cutest." And of course the students react to it because anybody would. And she's like, "Shut up," as if they're being immature, which I always thought was funny. I'm like, well, you're instigating something kind of weird and unprofessional. But I guess that's what they want to get across in her character, that she sort of she's young and wants to prove herself and thinks that she can turn the system upside down and really get to these kids if she does it on their level or some bullshit like that.
Only a young teacher would have those ideologies.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she wants to teach these kids like actual like classic literature and stuff that's actually going to get them thinking. But if it has any kind of I don't even remember what book they're talking about in the movie. That's the lady calls it pornography. The other
it's a short story called I think The Destructors.
Pornography.
Yeah, just because it has some kids doing acts of vandalism, not even violence in it and stuff, but it seems to inspire the actions that Donnie does later on. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so when we're introduced to him and his family, at first they might seem a little dysfunctional, but then you find out no, they're more or less a normal family. It's just and you can relate in a lot of ways. He's had a troubled past. He's had some mental health issues, and he's already in therapy. There's allusions to the fact that he had set a fire a few years ago, and stuff like that. So he'd been seeing a therapist, and it's understood that he's had some emotional / mental issues. But the family is more or less dealing with it in a somewhat healthy manner. They recognize that they're trying to help him. At first, he doesn't seem all that likable. He gets mad. He calls his mom a bitch at one point, which is pretty harsh. But over time, he gets more sympathetic.
He called her a bitch, but she wasn't in the room. He was like, "Get out of here," and kind of said it under his breath, kind of.
She heard him in the hall. She even says it to the father. She said, "Your son just called me a bitch."
Yeah, I know, but it was kind of like, he may not have said it to her face.
I suppose. But as I said, he becomes more likable as it goes on. At first, he just seems like he's sort of a troubled weirdo and kind of unlikable, and you get why people don't like him. But I think he sort of wins you over as time goes on.
Well, he's essentially a latchkey kid is kind of the way I thought about it, because, it shows him and his friends with a BB gun shooting bottles and drinking, just kind of doing whatever the hell they want to after school.
Well, yeah, like I said, they go to I think it's a private school because they seem to have uniforms. It seems to suggest that most of these kids have fairly affluent backgrounds, and it's a lot like what we see. It's not ramped up to the degree of a movie that I watched recently, again, discussed with Cameron, the movie Bully, but it's kind of the same thing where you have sort of these kids that they don't really have to worry about stuff, and they can just, their parents don't really have much idea of what they're doing. They just go out and do whatever. They're not that supervised or structured and as I said, but they're not dealing with the problems of kids, of a lower class. It's not like they live in dangerous neighborhoods or have to worry about crime or drugs and stuff. So as you said, there's some scenes where there's just a sort of disconnect and detachment between them and their parents. It's like their parents have no idea what they're getting up to half the time, which, that transcends that. You can say that about any generation or any sort of group of kids. I mean, I even had that to a certain degree with my own parents and stuff, and that in no way suggests that my parents weren't involved in my life, because they very much were. were, you know. But yeah, maybe his parents are a little more absent, but still, they're not like absent to the point where they're, you know, they don't care about him. They do care about him. They ask him about things. They are sending him to this therapist to get him help, not just because they're worried about what the neighbors will think or something, but because they're genuinely concerned about him. And he has a pretty, I guess, decent, normal, healthy relationship with his sister. Like, they insult each other a few times at the table, but they don't take it seriously. They kind of laugh it off and stuff. He says something like, "Why do you have to be such a fuck ass?" And she's just like, "What is a fuck ass?" And then they just laugh about it and stuff.
How does one suck a fuck?
He's like, "I want you to tell me. I'm all ears." So things, when they get into the sci-fi stuff, is that it's already understood he's probably schizophrenic, but then he's sleepwalking. When he's sleepwalking, he has visions of somebody in a bunny costume, a very sinister-looking bunny. I'm sure anybody who's familiar with the movie knows what it looks like. It's a pretty popular image in culture. A few years ago, I went to a Comic-Con thing, and there was somebody in the same suit. Looked really good. I think I took their picture. And you know it. And it would start telling him stuff. And the main thing it did is it draws him out of the house. And now he's outside, and it tells him that the world is going to end in, what is it? 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, 12 seconds. And he, you know, he's skeptical of this, but then the incident happens wherein from the sky, a huge jet engine falls and plummets onto his house, right into where his bedroom was, and it would have killed him if he'd been there. Luckily, no one else is hurt and stuff, and it's this really weird thing. So then he decides he should listen to the bunny, since it did seem to save his life getting him out of there. So he does start, even though he's not sure if he's going crazy or what, he does start to listen to the bunny, which calls itself Frank. And we go from there. And one of the weirder things about this incident about falling from the sky is that when the authorities look into it, they can't find any evidence of any such plane having, you know, that happen. So it's like this came out of nowhere and it can't be explained, and then sort of pushed to the back burner for a moment. One thing this movie does really well, though, is in a few other movies we talk about the whole Chekhov's gun thing, where certain things are set up to happen later. There's a bunch of stuff in this movie where this is set up, that's set up. A lot of things are mentioned so they can tie in and go off later. And I think it's handled pretty well, because it's more than most movies. There's probably at least 4 or 5 of these elements that at one, you know, we see it early in the movie that it's reflected upon, it's remarked upon, and then later in the movie it has a direct effect on what happens towards the end.
I mean, some of that may be intentional.
Oh, I think it's absolutely intentional. That's what I mean.
I mean, it may be intentionally obvious. You know, so you can see it. You know, foreshadowing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's what I mean. I don't think there's any problem with that. The only thing is sometimes if a movie has too many of those, it can seem clumsy. And I just think this movie actually has several, and they all go off really well. It's a well thought out plot to me. They all sort of fall like dominoes. Is kind of what I meant. I meant that it gets actually pretty well executed. But,
and I'll be honest with you, man. I had forgotten most of this movie, like most of the key aspects of the the plot towards the end. Like, I totally forgot that Patrick Swayze was a pedophile. I mean, man. But, yeah, blown away. Blown away. Love this movie.
Yeah, so while he's trying to sort of figure out these events for himself, and this is one of the things, like I said, that some people take issue with the director's cut giving us too much information, is that there's basically sort of 3 sort of explanations for things. It's just schizophrenia is just sort of going out of control. Time travel is possible, and somehow some sort of loop has been started, or there's something crossing over from an alternate dimension. Now, if you watch the director's cut thing, the alternate dimension one is the one that lines up the most and seems to be hinted at the most and makes the most sense. And I'm fine with it, but there's some people that think it should be left to be more ambiguous and not give you that answer. But I don't know. I still don't feel like it's necessarily saying it has to be. So.
I think it's not, it doesn't have an answer. It's intentionally ambiguous.
Right.
It's like a David Lynch movie. There is no right answer.
But there are people that feel like because of them using the book and some of the stuff that they are trying to point out an answer, and that's why certain people don't like the director's cut, because they think, okay, now what was ambiguous, you're now trying to provide a clear answer for it. But as you said, I didn't really fully get that. I mean, you can take that away from it, but I don't feel like it's so strong. You can watch the director's cut and feel like it's absolutely telling you that. I still feel like the ambiguity is there, maybe not as much as before, but I don't think it ruins it. As I said, maybe I'm not equipped right now to defend the director's cut too much because I haven't seen the theatrical cut in so long. But at least for now, I feel like the director's cut is probably the way to go. But it's good that you can watch both.
It seemed like there was some more humor in the director's cut that I didn't remember. Um, some more banter with the kids in school and stuff like that. Because I don't remember
because it makes the movie about 20 minutes longer. As I
Yeah.
said, the main thing that makes it different again is the pace. Now it slows the pace down, which I don't mind because it's giving you a little more information here and there, and like you said, some of the humor. Another thing that makes the movie difficult to classify is its tone, and I think it's a really difficult tone to pull off. And I like that they managed to do it because it's again, here's the image on here, and there he is with the axe. So there's some incredibly dark images and dark moments in the movie that can make you think it's going to go one way, but it never actually goes that way exactly. Like when he gets the axe, you think, what's he going to do? Murder his family? But instead he goes and vandalizes the school and floods the school, copying what had happened in the book. Sort of, he breaks the water main and floods the school. So I like that aspect of there's trouble at the school and the PTA has to meet and stuff like that, and it's kind of a stock character as one of the teachers. But what I find odd is she's the gym teacher. What a weird person to be a gym teacher. That woman, the woman that has all the moral outrage.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
So it's like, can you imagine, like, at your school, there was some sort of vandalism, and the cops are looking into it, and then your gym teacher, of all people, was like, this has to be addressed. And so the gym teacher, instead of teaching gym class, decides, we're all going to watch videos of some, like, self-help new age guru thing, which was all the rage in the 80s. There's a lot of it going on in the 80s and going to the 90s, and they do some really good and in that, it's a program led by Patrick Swayze's character, who's Jim Cunningham, who's sort of a semi-famous motivational speaker and stuff. And it has all the hallmarks of that stuff we've seen. And it's done really well with like the weird music and the testimonials from the people it saved. And then there's no substance to any of it, of course. It's all just, it's all empty platitudes and buzzwords and stuff, and like no actual answers for anything.
Are you fat? Stop being fat. Are you gay? Pray the gay away. Shit like that.
Yeah, basically. And there's a pretty good scene where, of course, Donnie takes them to task on this, where they actually get to step up to the mic and ask him questions.
How much are you getting paid to be here?
Yeah. But I like that whole thing, the adult world and the kid world, and they're sort of clashing, and the adult world sort of struggling to come up with solutions. And in this way, like one of the worst ways, instead of directly talking to the kids and stuff. But I just love it that it's this gym teacher that takes it upon herself. Like, she's the one that's going to like fix this moral dilemma that they're all facing and stuff. And she's going to do it by exposing to the wisdom of Jim Cunningham. It's pretty funny.
She also teaches the dance class with Donnie's little sister.
Right. So yeah, so there's like this dance class that's its own little group called Sparkle Motion. And she's, you can tell, she's one of, because she doesn't just teach it, she actually has a daughter at the school too, and the daughter's in it. So I think we've all met people, at least maybe not less extreme, but at least toned down versions of this, of like, the really gung-ho parent that, has their kid in this, and they're the head of this, and they're the kid's coach, they're the kid's teacher, they're really involved. And she's that, and the gym teacher, and she's some sort of crazy moral guardian, all rolled into one.
She reminds me of that woman in Texas that tried to have one of the other cheerleaders killed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's one of the funnier made for TV movies.
Yeah, I forget who played the lead role, but she did a good job in it. One of the Coen brothers.
Yeah, that's right.
The Coen brothers like to use all the time.
But I think who was it in this? Was that Kitty Farmer? Was that her name? Played by Beth Grant, I think. I think Kitty Farmer is the name.
Yeah, I believe Kitty Farmer was the name, yeah.
Yeah, right. So
I've seen Beth Grant in some other stuff. I can't place it, though.
Mm-hmm. So to try this for the people who are wondering, so while some of the English classes are being taught that short story, The Destructors, in which what happens is you have a group of kids that vandalize an old man's home and stuff, and then when Donnie has one of his like visions and Frank guides him and he has the axe, it guides him to go to the school, cut the water main causing flood damage, but then he also vandalizes the statue and then leaves a big graffiti on the wall that said like, they made me do it, or something like that. And this leads to like a knee-jerk reaction from that gym teacher, from Farmer, to accuse the English teacher of exposing the kids to immoral stuff. And as you said, she even goes so far as to call pornography and stuff like that. And they're at odds. That's one of the things. It's her. She's totally at odds with Drew Barrymore's character, Pomeroy.
Real quick, I remember where I know her from.
Yeah.
Beth Grant was in No Country for Old Men. She was Carla Jean's mother.
The mother, yeah. She's the one that blows everything by
Yeah.
giving it away to the... Yeah, I remember that, too.
You need to go back to graduate school.
Dolled her up and made her look a bit older, but yeah.
Get your ass back to graduate school.
So, yeah, the other thing that happens is Jenna Malone's the new kid, and she shows up, and he takes sort of an immediate interest in her and defends her from a couple of the bullies, the local bullies, one who's Seth Rogen, who has some... If I ever meet Seth Rogen, I'll tell him, like, this is like the best thing you've done, is like, go up to Jenna Malone and go, I like your boobs. Which is pretty funny and stuff, so... Yeah, and he senses that she's an outsider because she's the new kid and stuff, and that she's facing a difficult situation. She moved because her parents got divorced, and then he's like, "Why'd they get divorced?" It's like, "Oh, my stepdad stabbed my mom like 4 times." Because at first before she said that, she said, "Oh, he has emotional problems." He goes, "Oh, I have those too. I have emotional problems." He's happy to tell her about them, but then she's like, "What kind does he have?" It's like, "Oh, he stabbed her 4 times, but he didn't go to jail. But we had to get away from him, so I'm here." And stuff, so I guess he can sort of sense a bit of a kindred spirit, an outsider, and within only a little while of knowing each other, he asks her. He said, "Do you want to go with me?" And he means like go out. And he's like, "That's what we say at this school. Like if you're going with me." And she's like, "Sure." So she agrees to be his girlfriend pretty quickly, which is another, as we see, it's part of this movie has to do with time and fate and destiny and the stuff that's predetermined and stuff, and this sort of ties into that, his relationship with her, and a choice he has to make at the end as we go forward. But she's one big bright spot, is that he's really enjoying being with her and have somebody to talk to. And we see the frustrations he has when he talks to some of his other friends. There's a pretty funny part, as you said, with the BB gun in some clearing shooting at stuff, and they have this. He and his 2 friends have this discussion. They're going on about the Smurf situation, and like
that's a hilarious discussion.
What Smurfette is there for, and they postulate that Smurfette was created by Papa Smurf, and she's just there so all the Smurfs can release their sexual tension, so they all bang her and stuff, and they're talking about that, and they're talking about Papa Smurf filming the gangbang so he can get off to it and all this stuff, and then he's like really mad at them. It's like, you're not even paying attention. Gargamel made her, and he made her to infiltrate the Smurfs, and he said sex doesn't even come into it with the Smurfs. They're completely asexual beings. There's nothing under those white pants or something like that. And they're just like, damn it, Donnie, why did you get all smart on us? But yeah, it's a funny scene. But there's other little things going on, like I said, that's set up for later on, and some of them are sort of coincidences. There's a local old woman who seems to be quite senile that will wander into the street, and people almost hit her with their cars and stuff because she's always going out to like check a mailbox even though there's nobody there. You find out that she long ago had been like a nun or something. Then she had some sort of weird epiphany and kind of renounced religion and started writing books about science. And she wrote this book about time travel that is, at the crux of everything here that he gets a hold of because he's trying to figure out what the stuff with Frank means and if he can stop the world from ending and, and all that stuff. So he's pretty open-minded about it all. And there's another teacher that he asks about, and he's the one that gives the book to her. And it's just sort of coincidence that the person that wrote the book is actually sort of a local person in the town that people know. Mm-hmm. And there's a few other things setting up, like I'm not going to jump ahead to what's happening, but that confrontation that happens towards the end of the movie is near her house because he wants to go to her house to get some straight answers from her, and he runs into the bullies because the bullies have planned to burglarize her house, which again seems to suggest that maybe they were influenced by the short stories. Like, yeah, we can burglarize old people's homes. That is a good idea, story. That's what we should do, which is kind of funny. But
yeah, I didn't realize
why it's Donnie Darko, but they even remark on it. Like he meets Jenna Malone, she's just like, Donnie Darko. That's like a weird name. You're like a superhero or something like that. And there's just a lot of those alliterative names in the plot. Maybe it's because he likes comic books or whatever. But you've got like Frankie Fiedler, Day Dennis, Joni James, Sean Smith, Donnie Dixon, Sharita Chen. Rita Chen is the
Oh
fat
man,
girl that they make fun of at the bus stop.
I feel so sorry for her in this movie. I think I cry every time just the way they treat her.
You know, they're
It's
also
just
mean.
so
The
sad.
only response she has is like, "Shut up." Even
No,
when somebody says nice to
shut
her.
up.
Yeah. Even when somebody says something, try to be nice to her, she just senses the pity and she's just like, "Shut up."
Hmm. But yeah, I didn't realize that Noah Wild's character was in a relationship with Drew Barrymore's character.
Yeah, it's not really that important.
I just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I knew that the first time around.
I
Because
probably
I
didn't
don't.
the first time around either. I mean, I know it now, but it's not really that important to the plot. It does, you know, it just
Yeah, I guess you're right.
it just sort of gives them an excuse to talk to each other a little more and stuff because we get some of Drew Barrymore's frustration because yeah, all the moral panic that's going on at the school. They're using her sort of as a scapegoat, and this is another thing that I like about the director's cut that's not in the theatrical. Like the whole thing where they have to switch books and she makes them read Watership Down. That's not in the theatrical cut at
Mm-hmm.
all. And I like it because I think they always wanted it to be in there because it's silly as it is. Frank the Bunny was inspired by him reading Watership Down for whatever reason, even though I don't see why. I mean, the only difference is bunnies and stuff. And it's also one of the scenes where you get to see like for a lot of it, as Donnie's like lashing out at the adults and the authority figures, most of the time you're sort of on his side and you agree with him, especially when he has like easy things to point out, like the Jim Cunningham and stuff like that. But everything he says about like, but he's sort of like so stressed and upset by the time he's like flipping out about Watership Down. Like everything he says is more or less wrong. Like he misses the point entirely because he's just saying, "Why should we care? Nobody cares about rabbits. They don't have our
Mm-hmm.
range of emotions and blah blah blah." When the whole point of the book is, well, with the context of this book, they do that they actually do have the deep emotions and all that stuff. And there is a great part where it shows them watching the movie, and it's the beginning of the movie, and it's where Fiver is having his vision of the fields filling with blood, which is kind of like Frank's warning about the world ending. You know, and stuff. So a nice parallel there. So I really appreciate having that added in.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Plus, it ties in for us because we did an episode on Watership Down. If you haven't seen
Right.
it, go back and check it out. Based on
Yeah,
the
and No Country for Old Men.
Richard Adams novel, yes, and No Country for Old Men.
That was the first episode. Going all the way back. But yeah, I guess we can get into what's actually going down here.
Sure.
The paranormal elements of the film. It's all pretty much a normal story until the engine falls where his bed where he would have been in his bed. That's when stuff starts to get a little weird, and
so his
starts to see Frank.
His hallucinations, or we're going to call them, his encounters with Frank. They intensify. They get more serious and dire and stuff, especially as the day is approaching, because he's saying about how the world's going to end. And,
right.
And part of him believes it, and part of him just thinks I'm kind of going crazy. But at the same time, it's enough to again do what Frank does. Although he sort of makes it sound like he has to do, because he says like, "Why did you make me?" Why did you make me do that? Like as if like he didn't have a choice in the matter and stuff. But
right.
And it brings him back full circle in that he gets him to set another fire, and it's one of those things where it does seem to balance out. The universe works out because he goes to a movie with Jenna Malone. She falls asleep in the theater, giving him the perfect alibi to go off, and it's just sort of revealed to him through Frank, who actually he sees in the theater. That's where that's where he first takes out. And they have the famous lines like, "Why do you wear that stupid bunny suit?" It's like, "Why do you wear that stupid man suit?" Stuff. And he actually does take off his mask, and you see sort of a young guy with his eye all gone. And at the time, you have no idea what that could mean or anything like that. He's just like, "Why are you called Frank?" He's like, "It was my father's name and his father before him." And it sounds all very deep and meaningful, and it's really not in a way. But anyway, and then he's just sort of like, I know where his home is. It's been revealed to me. And so he sets him off to find this Cunningham guy's home, which is another weird coincidence. This like semi-famous motivational speaker guy also has a home in the area too. Not only does that reclusive, senile old writer, but this guy does too anyway. So he goes and burns the place down. And, there's sort of a greater purpose revealed behind that. It's not just, to burn the guy's house down because he's an asshole, but as it turns out, when fire crews show up and stuff, it reveals that he had all sorts of illegal things in his basement. They refer to it as a kiddie board dungeon, not just suggesting that he had a lot of, child pornography, which is illegal, but also that he was part of some sort of ring that would, disperse it and stuff. So very serious crimes. And, so suddenly the moral guardians, their big like solution to everything is like revealed to be completely heinous, and the last person that should be giving any sort of advice about, you know, ethics or morality and stuff. And it makes it all the more creepy that he was the host of the dance competition with all these prepubescent girls dancing in makeup and stuff. It's like, yeah, you bet he likes this. You know? And the irony, of course, is the audience is really into it. They're like, oh, this is great, you know, and they have that thing. So that's what's juxtaposed. So while she's sleeping at the movies and while his sister is part of the dance troupe and performing, he goes and sets the fire. And it's all done pretty well. And you have the Duran Duran song "Notorious" playing. And it's pretty cool. I like how it's done. It's sort of overlayers on that. And he gets back to the theater just in time for her to wake up. So everything works out perfectly for him. He's got a perfect alibi that he was at the theater with her and she can't say otherwise and stuff. And so it seems like, once again, the universe is sort of on his side. And he's sort of fighting that battle as it goes, right? Like, you know, should he be a nihilist or what? It seems like his life is a big, cruel, cosmic joke. No matter whatever he does, he seems to be stuck in this loop. As we find out, the only solution is to like allow himself to die, not just for that, but to save others, as it turns out. So you've got that sort of theme going through the movie about, and they even have some direct conversations about it. You know, about fate and if stuff is predetermined and if you can really do anything to change your destiny, blah blah blah. You know, they have those sorts of discussions. He gets so into it that the science teacher that's talking to him says like he can't even talk to him anymore about it or he'll get fired. I don't really know what that means. Like, fired for how? At what point did this like cross a line and become inappropriate?
Yeah, I didn't understand that either.
Yeah, because I can't see, like, unless like it was some situation where they found out about it and his parents were like, oh, my son doesn't believe in God anymore because of you. But it's not like that anyway. And he sort of proclaims himself in his conversations with his therapist that he's an atheist. Another thing that really changes in the director's cut is that we have an extra scene towards the end. I think his last scene is extended where it's in the original cut too, where he goes under and he gets hypnotized to tell her about things. But later when he comes out of it and stuff, before he leaves, she tells him that the medication he's been taking are all placebos. That's not in the theatrical version. That's added. So if you watch the theatrical version, you think he's on real meds. Then you get this reveal in the director's cut that she didn't even really seem to believe in his psychosis or anything like that, and was just giving him fake medication, which seems to be incredibly unethical. But I don't really know the rules and stuff like that for how it goes.
It's like she was doing her own little psychological experiment.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, let's see. And at first, that's what she tells her to the parents. She just says he's having what she calls like daytime hallucinations, which it seems to her, she doesn't think it's like a serious psychological thing. It has more to do with just like letting your mind wander, not being an actual mental condition, but just something that anybody's sort of capable of doing. But as we go further, she does start to believe him and take him seriously, especially after she's hypnotized him and he's talking about Frank and stuff like that. But at this point, she wants to like sort of tell the parents that she thinks, he could do something violent. And towards the end, it seems that we're going that way. He finds a gun and takes it. So,
yeah, the little wormholes. I was going to bring those up, or little portals. What do you want to call those?
Yeah, sure.
Swirly things that don't look as good as I remembered.
No.
Nowadays. So, but they like lead around to places. The dad, I know, at one point goes to the fridge, and then that's when it goes upstairs and shows him where the gun is hidden. Yeah,
and it's sort of like, I don't know. He's as part of this. Either he's given some sort of clarity, or he can see like the alternate reality overlapping on ours, and that's how things, like you said, how it leads him to things. He can see things, and that's why sometimes he can just see stuff. It's kind of like that stuff in the Abyss, except in the Abyss those are aliens, but it's a similar effect leading around. But it's funny, like they're watching like some football game from the 1988 season, so it's really authentic, I guess. Plus, the other thing in the background is like, it's leading up to the presidential election of '88 between Bush Sr. and Dukakis. And one of the first things, I think the first line you get is his sister, like, doing the defiant liberal daughter thing, proclaiming she would vote for Dukakis, arguing with her conservative parents, that she's old enough to vote, so she's not going to vote the way they vote. That's probably a pretty time-tested thing that a lot of families have gone through, where they have some sort of headstrong child that wants to just, say, I'm going to use my political voice to go against your beliefs and stuff. And yeah, so Dukakis comes up a few times. They even show some footage of him and Bush both, I guess, in some of their debates and stuff leading up to the election. It's kind of
previously recorded. It all says at the bottom, previously recorded.
Yeah.
Like, all the footage they show says that. Even I Watership Down says that.
Yeah. I guess maybe that's kind of an in-joke. I don't know.
Maybe the time travel angle. I don't know.
Yeah. It's possible. But so this is all coming to a head where as October continues and he's sort of doing more disruptive things, but the one good thing is he's more or less getting along with his parents. Despite this, he gets along with his sisters. It's really just sort of the authority figures in the school that he's clashing with, and a lot of it had to do with the Jim hunting thing. And what's funny is once he more or less indirectly, because he didn't know what he was doing when he burned it down, exposed that guy as, the pedophile and stuff, Cunningham, Farmer is still his biggest champion and thinks that it has to believe that it's all some sort of conspiracy, which again leads to the way events follow, because the group, the Sparkle Motion group, which she was head of, was supposed to go on a trip somewhere, and of course she would have been the chaperone for them. But since she feels compelled, she has to go to the guy's trial and testify on his behalf, and this is what puts Donnie's mother in the unenviable position of having to go. And she just says, you're the last of the parents I would have considered, but everyone else is.
Yeah, why? I mean, who says that? I mean, even if it is true, who says that? Ugh.
I don't know. But, I guess they're just trying to. I guess she says it because they're just trying to show how unraveled she's become, because she's so upset about what's going on with Cunningham. I think it's probably that, right? Like, she doesn't have a filter or anything. She's just, her mind is elsewhere. She's so upset about this whole situation. Her big moral hero that she believed in his philosophy is being, revealed as this really bad person, and she wants to disprove it and prove that it's all a big conspiracy and stuff. I figure it's that. It's like, yeah, she's just sort of become completely unraveled at this point. She's desperate, so she's not even trying to, like, be polite or anything and stuff. So the mother agrees.
She's just the best line in the movie is said right here. Sometimes seriously doubt your commitment to Sparkle Motion.
Yeah. For whatever reason, I guess that's enough for his mother to decide, okay, I will. Plus, her daughter is in it, so she does have to do that.
She's the lead dancer.
Mm-hmm. And so what coincides with that is the father's already out of town, and he finds out his older sister has been accepted into Harvard. So to sort of celebrate this, they're going to do what kids do when their parents are out of town, have a party, and since it's near Halloween, have a Halloween party at the house. And so everything sort of comes down to the events of this night, because now we're only a few hours away from when Frank said the world would end. And then we get the party where I guess he sort of gets to express his love, because it's funny too, because after they'd only been going out for 2 weeks, but even after 2 weeks, they hadn't even kissed or anything, and they're walking together in some park, and she's just like, "Oh, you want to kiss?" And he like leans in, she pulls back, and he's like upset. She's just like, "Well, I want it to be special when we kiss and stuff." And he's like, "But," and she's like, "Well, right now there's just some weird fat guy looking at us." The camera pulls out to reveal some like weird fat guy in like a red tracksuit, like smoking a cigarette, staring right at them.
Some guy from like Aqua Teen Hunger Force or some shit over there.
And he just like wanders off camera. I think that's great.
He's got like a sweatsuit and a cigarette.
Yeah, but at the party, there's sort of basically, to me, sort of two famous images of Donnie. One is when he's like doing his weird deranged look, tapping on the mirror with Frank on the other side, and the other is him at this party where he's wearing the T-shirt that has the skeleton revealed underneath. I think those are sort of the things most people think of when they think of him in this movie.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, so yeah, we got I like how the party's going, and they've got Level Terrace Apart playing, which, as we say, is sort of appropriate to what happens, but also appropriate just for the setting and the kids and stuff. And it's a good sort of party background song. And he gets to go upstairs and lose his virginity and have sex with her. And I guess it's, somewhat special. A lot of people, their first time wasn't particularly special or wasn't particularly with somebody they even really liked. But in this, it's supposed to be, it's somewhat romantic. It's somebody he really cared about, and they get to have this together and stuff. And then, so it's kind of nice. And they come out, and at this point, we don't realize her life is on the line. All he knows is that he's running out of time for the world to end, if he even believes in it. And if he does believe in it, maybe it just means he's going to go completely crazy when this is all up. So then he decides that the only thing left to do, since the book he'd been reading seemed to be providing him some real insight and answers, was he had to talk to this woman. So he was going to go. So he gets two of his other friends to come with him, and they go out on bikes just to remind us that these are teenagers, and they ride out to find her house so they can talk to her. And this is where suddenly all the Chekhov's guns start going off. So the bullies, the two, including Seth Rogen and the other guy that had been harassing her and the other people, and one had even directly threatened his life when he thought that people were going to blame him for the vandalization of the school. They interrupt them trying to burglarize her house, which I said is, again, it's sort of funny. It's like they were inspired by that short story, just like he was. He was inspired to do the flooding, and they were inspired to burglarize the home of an elderly person. And they have a confrontation that's looking pretty bad. Like the unhinged guy with the knife might even really kill him or something. And, they're wrestling in the street. And then she's in the street because the woman does that. And, when he was back, just before he leaves the party, he sees that somebody named Frank has left a message on the fridge that he was going for a beer run. And it turns out that Frank, well, now we know why he's in a bunny costume, because Frank is one of the kids at the party, one of his sister's friends. He's a bit older, and he's wearing that. So what happens is he's driving his Trans Am. The woman is out in the street. He swerves the woman and inadvertently winds up running over Jenna Malone, who had been knocked out into the street after the confrontation with the bullies, killing her. He didn't know why he had the gun, but as soon as Frank came out of the car and his friend was like, "I think you killed her," and Frank's like, "What were you doing in the middle of the road?" He takes off his thing, and wordlessly, Donnie shoots him, and obviously in the eye, and shoots him and tells the other one to go home. So now we're at the point where the world is supposed to end soon. His girlfriend has died right before him. He doesn't have any answers, and things are sort of spiraling out of control. And I guess what does he do after that? He just sort of spends the night out with her body. Like, he picks up her body and sort of just carries her.
Yeah, that's bizarre, man.
But he's out with her for most of the night.
Well, he puts her in the car and just kind of rides around with her for a little while.
Yeah, he spends the night just sort of going around and stuff. I don't know if he now what, and you don't really get an idea. I guess you're just supposed to speculate if he really believes in the end of the world anymore, if he thinks that her dying was the end of the world, since it was something really bad that happened that he wasn't able to stop. But then things get really meta and crazy, because when he gets to his house, there is a swirling vortex over his house, a very dark, scary swirling vortex. And all of a sudden, the time loop sort of catches up to itself, and this is where there's not really any rules or anything that really make real sense. This is where you have to make your own sort of logic, and depending upon what you want to believe actually happened and what he's seen and how he interprets it and blah, blah, blah. So suddenly, as the world is about to end, that's going on. And, sorry, I lost my spot. But anyway, yeah, and an airplane descends from above, and it turns out coincidentally to be the airplane that his mother, sister, and the dance troupe are on. It's going to lose, and the idea is it's going to lose the engine in the same way, but it will also kill everybody on board, that the airplane will crash.
Right, but we're supposed to believe that since he died, none of that other stuff will happen. So
right, so it's one of those.
The mother won't have to be on the plane, but right. the daughter may still die on that plane. The sister. You
think so? So it's not completely clean, and this is where he sort of has to make the choice, and he decides that what he's been told and what he's been shown, it's like he was given this extra time so that I guess he could meet Jenna Malone, even though it was painful to lose her. But now he has a chance. Well, even he won't get to meet Jenna Malone. He'll create sort of an alternate timeline where he doesn't meet Jenna Malone, but that means she won't die, and it means his family won't die, but he has to die. And he just sort of smiles, this sort of thing. He goes back to the bed and accepts it, and things play out as they do. He sort of laughs. The jet engine crashes through him. He dies, and then we get to see sort of a nice montage of the people that over the last 28 days that had interaction with them. I like it because they don't really give us an idea, but you get the idea that all the people that have been touched by him, they feel something.
Yeah.
When sort of the timeline realigns, you just sort of see them reacting sort of all privately in different ways. Right. It's like they felt something, like they knew something was off.
And Frank touches his eye. You don't know if it's to wipe away a tear or, I'm going to get shot here in a little while. Or
right. And we see that Frank is, at this point, because now we're back to October 2nd, he's making drawings because he's made the costume himself. He's in the early stages where he's trying to design his costume, but he does have the head part by him and stuff like that. And so what we get is he's created a world, or he's set the timeline properly, or he's the thing that they talk about a lot in the stuff that they show in the book that's in the director's cut is they talk about a tangent universe versus like some other universe. And the idea was one universe sort of overlapping or intruding on the other, and that's what's causing the problem. So the idea was at first, when it first happened, the reason the jet engine, there was no explanation for it, was because technically it was from another timeline or another universe from the tangent, and it come in over into the tangent universe and had set up these events, and somehow him allowing it to hit him snapped everything into place so that suddenly this universe was here, this universe was here, and I can't really fully explain it, and that's the point, that there's not really a definite set of rules here. It's just sort of your own ideas of and your own interpretations of his interpretations and stuff, because you also wonder how much of this stuff happened because it's the way he perceived it, blah blah blah. Like, you know, there's layers here, which is something I like. That's why I don't feel like that, even with that added stuff about the time travel universe and stuff in the book, I still don't feel like that necessarily hits us over the head and tells us that it has to be this way. I still feel like there's a certain amount of ambiguity.
Mm-hmm. So the jet engine that falls on him at the end, yes, that's coming from a different time, right? So that's coming through the portal. So
I guess so, because you
wouldn't be able to trace that one back to a plane either.
No, like I said, it's like sort of a loop that doesn't have any sort of resolution.
Right.
Every time you reach one end, there's still another end that isn't accounted for, because it's like on October whatever, the plane crashes. Jenna Malone gets run over and the plane crashes and his mother dies. But if he can go back to October 2nd and let this other plane, so it's like it takes its place. I think the idea is something like about how like you can't have any sort of vacuums in these realities. So it's just like, as long as that plane crashes, it keeps this plane from crashing. Again, there's not really necessarily any real set of rules for it, but it's sort of this idea of something from one reality occupying space in another, or another dimension or something like that. It's like, that's what I get out of it. It's like, for some reason, for whatever reason, it's like filling a hole.
Right.
If that crashes on October 2nd and kills him, somehow that fills the hole and keeps it from another one from arriving on the 28th or whatever, or the 30th, I guess. Yeah, the 30th, and crashing. Again, you know, it's not spelled up for you, so you sort of have to like piece that together. No, yeah, shut up, you're right. Sorry, I was just looking at that. But
shut up.
But everything does loop in pretty well. Like, you understand why Frank played the role he did. It's almost like he's atoning. Frank, even though it wasn't Frank's fault that he ran over Jenna Malone, it's Frank's character, or this aspect or version of Frank, that is helping him to sort of set things right, which is neat. So you can see him sort of like in a position of atonement. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's so many different directions you could go in. You can also go with the theory that, you know, he actually is schizophrenic and this is all in his head.
Mm-hmm. So I still think there's still three possibilities, and it's not just three, because it can be any combination of the three,
right,
too. So right. You can really pick and choose the way you want it to be, because I think you can make an argument for all of them or any combination. As I said, the whole thing I said about filling the space and stuff, that's just me. If you disagree with that, that's fine. That's just my way of making sense with it. So
yeah, I mean, that's all theoretical. So
right.
It's did you mention like a Jacob's Ladder scenario yet, that he actually did die the first time and the rest of it was just a dream?
No, I didn't think of that, but
again, I was just thinking that was another possibility.
It's certainly another possibility. As you said, it's like something that just gives him a chance to, like, he was supposed to die, but at least he gets a chance to be somewhat happy, and that he gets to sort of act out and cause trouble, and also he gets to meet Jenna Malone and sort of fall in love with her and stuff. It's like one sort of like last little thing he gets before his life is over. It's like, again, it's like extra time. It's like bonus time or something like that. But the whole thing about tangent universes. But
I mean, it's whenever there's an action, there's an equal and positive reaction? trying to think of the name of the way the theory states.
Yeah.
So like
one of Newton's theories, but yeah,
but
at least something similar to that concept. Like you said, like everything
but,
has some. This causes this, which causes this. And as I said, it was sort of like filling a hole. Is the way I saw it. Like one hole is created, so the tangent reality is filled in by another. Blah blah blah. So it's like he has to like fill the hole, or he has to fill the space in order to keep the other one from happening. And yeah.
He was supposed to die, but since he didn't die, all these other things are going to happen now, causing his mom and his girlfriend to die, and his sister.
So the main thing they want to get across is he's managed to avert that. They want to give us a somewhat happy ending, saying whatever happens, he's averting that. He's sacrificing averting that. But it's still ambiguous what could happen there, because if you're like a big like comic book or sci-fi geek like me, part of me sees like all these things stirred together. All these elements are setting up what's known as a time crash, which is basically just sort of like where everything goes out of whack, and there's even a good chance that reality stops. But again, this is just all sci-fi stuff. But and there's different forms of time crashes. It could be reality halting. It could be reality realigning itself in a completely different way, or it could be like one of those time loop things we talked about, like in Groundhog Day or something like that. So somebody like me sees this movie, and I mean, you can take it whatever you want, but it almost seems like, yeah, he's done what he can do, but like some sort of form of a time crash is inevitable. But that's, I think, just another layer that makes it sort of interesting.
This is it reminds me of another film I wanted you to watch. I wanted to do a show on sometime called Time Crimes. It's a French film. Kind of a similar things going on.
The main thing they're trying to say is that he's in what's known as a tangent reality, which is just an unstable temporary reality. And basically that's what his like 28 days are or whatever. It's his time over in this other reality. He gets to enjoy it for a little while, but they can't last. And he can either live in it in the loop, or he can give it up and set and realign the timelines. And that's the thing that differs between this and the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut doesn't necessarily say anything about that. This one gives you the idea of the alternate or tangent universe. And the idea is that they're inherently unstable and they can only last a certain amount of time before they collapse. And their collapse could cause some sort of time crash and endanger, say, the primary timeline or primary reality or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't it straight up say that?
That's what I mean. It talks about like artifacts, right? So the idea in this was the artifact from the tangent, the original artifact from the tangent intruding reality or universe was the jet engine. So basically what he had to do is, again, return it to where it belonged.
Makes sense.
Once it's returned to the primary universe, the universe no longer contains the anomaly, because that was the anomaly, right? The anomaly would be having some sort of duplicate object. That whole idea of like that we see in lots of sci-fi things about like two versions of the same thing can't exist in the same thing. Sometimes they even do in time travel, right? It's like you can't even go back in time and meet yourself because you can't have two versions of yourself. That'll like blow up reality, that concept. So the concept we're working with here is the case of the jet engine being sort of the foreign object. So he has to return it to the primary universe so that the tangent universe doesn't contain the anomaly of having a duplicate object from the other universe. But that's the other thing. So we see all those people as they're waking up. The idea is the tangent, the temporary version of all the people he met, they all disappear. That's sort of what it is. They all disappear and things snap back, and we get like a snapback. So that's what's stated in this more so than the theatrical version. They give you that whole idea about a tangent universe, the idea of having a foreign artifact from one causing an anomaly because you can't have two occupying the same reality, blah, blah, blah. That's the main difference, because they talk about that. But again, you don't have to take it all that seriously, because you can just cover it and say, well, as you said, you could still see it being just an extension of his own mental issues if you want. You could just say, like, he read the book and it just exacerbated the condition because it just opened up all these, theories and possibilities to him that in his own mind made sense, but doesn't necessarily make it the truth or reality at all.
Well, I mean, they put that he had previous problems in his past in there for a reason. So, I mean, someone with a history of mental illness, it's very easy to say that.
Yeah, and there's just so many little things that are set up, like I said,
Yeah.
that all have a bearing coming in about the lonely writer and how her being in the street is what caused the girlfriend to get hit. Some of those ironic things, like him revealing to his therapist that his biggest fear was dying alone, and he has to make the choice to die alone, otherwise. At least that's what he seems to have to do. So he has to make the choice to die alone. So it's like facing like his biggest fear and stuff.
When he's under the hypnosis, I think it's one of the later sessions they show in the movie. Do you think that she believes what he's talking about? As he's talking about, Frank and the world's going to end, stuff like that?
The impression I got was that she doesn't believe him until very late, but that she starts to believe him is what I get out of it. Like,
because she acts kind of bizarre there. Like, she lets him go on for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. But part of that could be professional curiosity too, like you said. He's sort of a weird, unique case. So,
yeah, almost like a multiple personality type.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's exactly what it is. Yeah. He's making me do these things.
Mm-hmm. There's other like little things to do that would be like, we talk about the choice he made to keep like some bad things from happening, like deaths and stuff like that. Like, it would also save Frank's life too, because if he isn't there for he wouldn't shoot Frank. But there's some other little things too, like he would not have his teacher wouldn't have lost her job, because probably nobody would have vandalized the school after she taught the class.
Okay.
So she wouldn't have lost her job. Cunningham wouldn't have been exposed. Nobody would be there to burn down his house. So he would continue, living his lie and getting away with it and stuff. So I like that it's not like just all like he keeps a bunch of bad things from happening by sacrificing himself, but like, there's still some bad things that he also has to allow to happen too. And so it's, I don't know. It's not, just some black and white thing. It's like this fixes it and this doesn't. It's like, well, it's basically, we have this reality, we have that reality, make your choice, but not all of it's going to be for the better. It's not like the teacher losing her job is the biggest tragedy, or even Jim Cunningham not getting found out, because you get the feeling a lot of those guys get found out eventually anyway. But those are two things, positive things that he did while he was existing in, if you want to call it that temporary reality. Those are two positive things he did that won't happen now because he sacrificed himself.
So Frank wrote on the fridge, gone to get beer or some shit like that, right?
Right.
Two questions. Why did he write that? Because it's not his house. And two, why was his writing so bizarre looking?
I have no idea why his writing was so bizarre looking. I know about that. The only thing I can think of was there were enough people at the party that would notice he was gone. Or maybe it was an issue people were saying, like, hey, where's the beer? So he was letting people know, I'm taking care of the beer thing. Because it is his car.
It's on the fridge. You're right.
I think the first time I read it and stuff, because I thought like he was borrowing somebody's car, but he wasn't. It's his own car. So it's not
that makes sense.
But I think it's just to let people know that the beer situation is being taken care of or something.
It's on the fridge. That does make sense. Okay.
Yeah,
you're going to get a beer. Okay, I'm going to get
beer. As far as
like
the writing, I don't know.
But who's the fat guy in the tracksuit? I'm looking at some fan sites. Yeah. That was a weird scene. That guy just he looked at him for a little bit, smoked a cigarette, threw it down, and walked away.
Yeah, but it was I guess the director himself said some things after the fact that aren't in the movie, but you can think. One was he wants you to know that as we said, those scenes of all the people sort of snapping back, that they all sort of have weird hazy recollections of occupying the other universe that where Donnie was alive in. And he says I guess maybe just because it'll please people, that actually that Cunningham, despite the fact not getting caught with he sort of has visions of it anyway, because he has a memory of it happening, and that he blows his head off because it's driving him crazy with guilt or something like that. So maybe he just said that to please people, because it's oh, we want the bad guy pedophile, to get what he deserves. Just oh, that happened. He's oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah, he's sobbing pretty uncontrollably. You can kind of put that together yourself. that he's going to be racked with guilt for, molesting whoever knows how many children.
Yeah, things
Makes
get
sense.
really things get really weird when you consider like that this director's cut. I don't know if this one, but one of the director's cuts. Yeah, I don't think this has the booklet, but there's one that has like the booklet. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the one with the booklet, but there was like a booklet that was released that was supposed to have excerpts of the book that's in it. So basically, you've got
Okay.
pages of the book where they explain some of this time travel stuff, and it's vital to figuring it out. So that book actually, gets published and released, explaining some of the background, and while explaining some of the time travel mechanics, the closest thing we have to an explanation of where Frank came from or who is actually manipulating Donnie, there's actually no real explanation for that. So you could be like, it's God or aliens or whatever. So
That's true. Yeah.
because the only other thing you could maybe, again, this is all possibilities. One is like that Donnie has like powers that he's not aware of, and that subconsciously he's the one that makes the whole Frank situation happen, so that he does that. Like he has some sort of like reality warping god powers, and in a certain extent, although at the same time he's still limited in that he still has to, I guess, be affected by what's going on in the realities. He can't just step out of it or make huge changes, but maybe he still has the power to draw certain things to himself to give him the awareness. I don't know. I know I'm getting really muddy here.
You know what it is? It's exactly like the film Dreamcatcher.
I don't even remember how that ends. Or are you just kidding? Yeah. But
no, the only thing that I said that they do this thing with their finger. They do this swirly bullshit.
Yes, okay. Yeah, that's right.
Looks like, if Donnie had a power, that may be what it is.
Maybe. The main difference between this and Dreamcatcher is that there's no like somewhat offensive like special person, because that's like that's like Stephen King's favorite thing. It's like, here's somebody who's mentally retarded, so they have like weird powers or are touched by God or something. I just love using them as devices for that. But yeah, as we said, just getting back to the movie, when I talked about like the movie ending with that montage of the people and him getting in the bed, that's where the Mad World kicks in, and it's it's very fitting and nice, and it's it has this dark, sad tone to it that really fits in well. And as I've said, that version became so popular that it popped up all over the place, and I'm sure it's been fine in some others, but this is the like definitive, and this is what it was made for.
Oh yeah,
it's really good. And it's really well done.
You hear it all the time. It's overused, is what it is, but I think it works so well in this film. You've been through that whole ride. The whole film is like a ride, and then it's finally over, and then it plays that song. I think it's really fitting. But I know I mentioned this before. This is like probably one of maybe 2 or 3 films that I've ever seen that I immediately watched it again after I watched it the first time. Like immediately started it over and watched it again. I'm just not the kind of person that does that type of thing. But it was just so powerful to me, and it still is. Like, because I had forgotten a good bit of it, so it hit me the same way. It's just really, I don't know, it evokes some sort of emotional response from me that just hits me in the right spot. I know.
I think so too. It's a really good deconstruction of several genres at once, which again I just think is really deft storytelling and filmmaking. It's not an easy thing to do. Like it's a deconstruction of fairly some sci-fi stuff. It's a deconstruction of coming of age, and it's a lot of stuff to balance. And I just think the movie's really successful in balancing these things and weaving them together, because it's the type of movie that if somebody hasn't seen it, you try to describe it to them, they're not gonna, they're gonna say that doesn't fit. That sounds stupid, or You kind of just have to see it.
But this is a movie that you would go see with a friend, and then you would talk about it the entire car ride home. You have in-depth discussion, which is so rare with films these days. That's one thing. It just really makes you think about all different kinds of things, and it's just such a well-made film too. I think it's got a great cast. I think is one thing that makes it so great. Jake Gyllenhaal. He basically had done what before this? Maybe Bubble Boy or some shit.
Yeah.
He had done nothing. So he was like unheard of, but he nails this role. Even the little sister, Davini Chase, does a great job. Or
Yeah, sure.
however you say her name. And I just loved it. The supporting cast is great, and you got Drew Barrymore, Patrick Swayze in there. Like legit actors.
Yeah,
That, playing relatively small roles, but still doing a great job.
for sure.
And for a first-time director, it's just like unheard of.
Yeah, and it's kind of not surprising that he couldn't really follow it up with anything as good. There seems to happen a lot. But yeah, so many things are done well. I really like it's one of the movies that I like the most that must have the most difficult tone, and yet they pull it off. Like I said, all the dark stuff, but balancing humor in there with it too, fairly deftly. Oh yeah, I remember now. Like the thing that Roberta Sparrow, the scientist author or whatever, remember she whispers to him, and we don't get to hear for a while. Like she says to him, everything dies alone, is what she told him.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow.
Yeah. The movie's also great because it has so many good like pop culture references. He talks about Kelly Bundy on Married with Children. He mentions Back to the Future.
Yeah.
The whole thing on bikes is at least somewhat similar to E.T., just a little bit of them going down the street with it. I like how he sees The Last Temptation of Christ, which was in theaters in 1988, but for whatever reason, it was a double bill with The Evil Dead, which I can only assume was because it was around Halloween, is maybe how they justify it. But that's a pretty interesting double bill to go to the movies about, which I like. And of course, the whole idea of him, like, at one point he even says, like, he describes it's just like a 6-foot talking rabbit that only I can see. Well, I mean, that's the plot of the movie Harvey. That what's his name? Oh my God, the guy from all those Hitchcock movies. Hitchcock's boy. It's a Wonderful Life. James Stewart. Funny, I don't know if you've seen Harvey, but Harvey's one of the more famous James Stewart movies, where it's about a guy that like tells everybody he meets that he has a friend who is this 6-foot rabbit that talks to him, and he's the only one who can see him. It's a really good movie. But yeah.
No, I haven't seen that. Wow. Yeah, that went way over my head there.
Yeah. But yeah, I know we talk a lot about the soundtrack, but I mean, it just shows a lot of good like awareness by the director, and I guess because of his age. And it said that the main reason it was made a period piece was simply because he felt that was like more his own age group, and he didn't feel like he could make like a coming of age story set in the 2000s because of his age. Like he wasn't aware enough to like, so he just set it in a time he could relate to himself. But yeah, like when I was talking about the music, I mean, having people like Echo and the Bunnymen, The Church, Joy Division. I mean, they're more popular now, but in the 80s, they were like basically associated with the type of characters we see. They were more novelties of American suburbia, and you have the self-styled outcasts and artistic types and kids and stuff. So it's woven in very well there. I like that. Like these aren't the type of kids that are going to be playing, Guns N' Roses at their house and stuff.
But that's back before that was really a thing too. This is 2001, back when people were still revolting against the 80s.
That's true too.
Now it's welcome with open arms, and
right, yeah.
There's those homages to E.T.
and Fest and everything.
Yeah. I mean, but back then, nobody wanted to see that. They wanted to see the new Pulp Fiction shit or whatever, whatever the trend was at that time. The Matrix probably.
Yeah, but I mean, we can talk forever about exactly what he's accomplished by sacrificing himself. Because the other thing, like, it depends upon how much you pay attention to the other stuff and how much you care about it or take seriously. Because the main thing you only really have to get across is yes, he made this sacrifice, and this will stop this and this from happening, and it will, save some people's lives and stuff. Even though it doesn't fix everything, because some of the positive things will be done wiped out too. But if you take it further, you actually realize that he's also saving pretty much that entire universe. That he's keeping those the tangent one and the other one from crashing, and basically either, like I said, causing that sort of time crash or just wiping it out altogether. So what he's also done is, when we talk about loops, is he's made. I don't know if he'll live if it's possible or not, but you could make the argument that he's actually now made a stable time loop that'll go forever, that exists entirely in that alternate universe he was in. Frank saves Donnie from being killed so that Donnie can be there to send the engine back. Along the way, Donnie shoots Frank in the eye and kills him. Frank's ghost, still in the bunny suit, missing an eye, then travels back and saves Donnie, starting the whole thing over again. So you can look at it that way too.
Wow.
Because that's the other thing is like you can think it's all tied up, and then just like, well, wait, it's another one of those loop things. This only would have happened if this happened, which goes back to what happens in a lot of the Terminator, whatever. None of the Terminator stuff they would have happened if you hadn't sent him back. Blah blah blah, all that stuff. So you get that's in there too, but it's actually done a little more neatly because what they've done is sort of set it aside. Okay, that's the stable universe. That's the loop. Because again, that's what they're saying. This is over here. This is over here. This is over here. Is type thing. And we're talking about them crashing into each other and the problems it's causing. So the main thing you can say is like his actions are basically realigning and keeping things separate.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only way to keep one from possibly ending or that kind of stuff. But it doesn't necessarily keep another from repeating forever. So he still might be doomed in a way. But at least he gets to spend his time with Jenna Malone. Like, honestly, you could make like a sequel that's not even a sequel to this movie, where you just alter some of his decisions, and it's like a completely different movie.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the sequel like the sister has similar things happen to her that happened to him?
That's all I know. I haven't seen it, but yeah.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Okay.
I've stayed away from it because everybody hates it. No, I don't need it.
I mean, I just watched it for I don't know why, but I don't remember it being much of anything. It definitely wasn't good.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I don't know if it was really bad, but it's just one of those cases where the original is such a beloved and good movie that people were there was no way a sequel could live up, and when they tried and it wasn't good, a lot of people it was very distressing.
Yeah, why would you even make a sequel to this?
I have no idea. It doesn't seem like I said, the closest thing I can think of as a sequel wouldn't really be a sequel and be impossible to do. You'd need to have all the actors at the same age and everything, because the way I see it is almost like a Back to the Future 2 situation, where you just go back into the same events and change them around and show us some of the other possibilities, which, you can't do, but it would have been neat. That's what they could have done. They could have shot a sequel back-to-back right after it and do a Back to the Future 2 thing and change some things around just to show us the possibilities.
Where there's a third.
I'm not saying that's necessary. I'm just saying it would have been kind of neat.
Donnie comes in riding the jet engine.
Yeah.
He falls in on top of it.
Right. But the whole idea is that these time loops are supposed to be unstable, but he, at the end, makes one stable. He moves himself and the jet engine that should have killed him back into the past. He closes the loop by dying the way he should have in the beginning, which negates everything that happened in the time loop, which tries as everything that was changed by his time travel exists outside the normal timeline, thus not affecting it. But we still have echoes of it, and that's what at least the director hints at, that there's echoes of it, because there's that shot towards the end where Jenna Malone sees his mother, and they've never met, but it's almost like they kind of feel like they have, and again, you can just make that up in that montage of the people, that they're all sort of having echoes of memories that didn't actually happen, but they did happen in the alternate time loop.
Almost like a deja vu type feeling or something like that. So
the
parallel
dimensions of Christ kind of makes sense in a certain way, in that Christ sacrifices himself, so you can get that into Donnie has a bit of a Jesus thing going on in a certain way too, in that he knows exactly what he has to do and what's going to happen, and he has to go and face it, because that's the same thing as like Jesus, right? Yeah. God told Jesus before anything happened, they are going to crucify you, and you have to not do anything about it and let it happen. So it's kind of a similar thing, in that Donnie already knows, and he just has to go and face it and let it happen.
So you're a fan of the parallel dimensions? Yeah,
because I understand why people think they don't like that. They like it being left more ambiguous, but I still think it can still be ambiguous. You don't have to necessarily say, but I don't know. It's been explained to. I'm a parallel dimensions person anyway. As I said, I have a lot of experience with them. So I don't know. They're a lot of fun to me. But I don't know. I like the idea of the jet engine being this weird time-altering MacGuffin. It causes this paradox, and it'll destroy the universe unless it can be returned to the timeline it belongs in. I like that kind of stuff. But you don't need the movie to have stakes that big. That's just for somebody like me that's like, oh, it's like Doctor Who or something.
you really don't even need any of that to make this movie. You could have just made a straight movie, and I think it still would have been an okay movie.
Yeah.
If say she just got ran over at the end and that was it. I mean,
And as I've said, all this stuff can either go over your head or just be something you disagree with, and that's fine. Like the movie doesn't necessarily need it. I think the strength of the movie is that it has layers, including layers that are completely kind of bonus extra layers that you don't have to dig into or accept if you don't want to. Because I'm sure some of the stuff I've said, there's people out there that either disagree with me or they just think, well, that's a little unnecessary. And you know what? That doesn't necessarily change how you have to view the movie at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why it's so interesting to me, is because, any of this stuff could be the way it is. It just really makes you think.
And it has just so much good imagery and just memorable moments and use of music and use of tone. There's just all sorts of just even little bits of scenes that stand out to me. I like how when he's in the bathroom and the mirror seems to have some sort of force field, so he just takes the knife and taps it. I like that. He sort of alludes to the fact that he's not necessarily a well person, and that while most people might reach out with their fingers and be like, "What's this?" and touch with their fingers, he's just bang, bang with a big knife. Little touches like that I enjoy.
Yeah, he said, "How are you doing that?"
Yeah, you can do it too. But as much as it's referred to as a director's cut, Richard Kelly himself says, you don't need to see it as a director's cut to me. It's just an extended cut. He's like, I never had any problem with the theatrical version. I still think the theatrical version is good. I'm not making a statement that the director's cut is the definitive version or the one you need to watch to get the film. And it makes it a very unique film in that aspect, in that it was a film that most people didn't see and didn't do that well. Small budget, went okay. And then 3 years later, has a director's cut released. I don't know. That seems kind of rare. I don't think that happens very much, especially with movies that aren't big successes.
I think it must have done really well on DVD or VHS, whatever.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, as I said, it's definitely one of the movies that comes to mind instantly when you think of a cult classic and a movie that has a big, audience of people that are really into it, and the mythology and the world it has and all that stuff, and all these existential stuff we've been talking about. They really like to talk about it.
Well, you mentioned, has a few strikes against it from when it got originally released, the September 11th, obviously. And, how do you even classify this movie? Because, it looks like it could be a horror film. And it even, the description, student visited by a demonic rabbit with eerie visions of the past. It almost sounds like a horror movie, the way it's...
And it has, images in it that look like they're straight out of it.
Right.
I like how it sort of kind of plays with their expectations.
You can't market that to the right audience. There's no way you could.
It's definitely one of those, it's one of those movies that, what trailer could you make that would really get this across?
It's not possible. Something very, very vague. That's the only way you could do it.
And the way things are done now, they would just try to explain things to us and show us too much, and yet there's not a context for it. So people would just be like, what? But just some really memorable dialogue and scenes, particularly when he's taking on authority figures, and he breaks down Cunningham's thing, because this whole simplistic idea is just well, everything's on the two spectrums of emotion. There's love and there's fear. Love is the good thing, and he has all these empty platitudes and stuff. Because one guy's like, well, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, and he's just like, well, I don't know if I can help you with that, but go towards love. Oh, okay, that's really helpful. Useful.
Oh man, the whole
same thing.
Love and fear. That's the two sides of life.
Because honestly, sometimes you see characters act a certain way in a movie, and you'd like to think you would, but you wouldn't. But I know I would have done the exact same thing if that was me in class. I would have been like, "This is bullshit. We can't answer questions this way. What kind of question? What kind of test or lesson are you teaching here? If you want me to pick between two extremes?" And I would have said a lot of the similar things he said, although I probably wouldn't have told anybody to shove anything up their ass. I was more polite than that. But I would have brought, but I mean, I would not have just sat there and been like, yes, teacher. I would have been like, what the hell is this? And I'd be like, why is the gym teacher teaching this? Is the main thing I would have said. I'd be like, why is this gym? Why are we watching new age videos from some weird motivational speaker about love and fear and all this empty stuff? I love, like, they show the kid is like, he had the bedwetting problem. He looks right in the camera and goes, I'm not afraid anymore.
Oh, God.
Because it's the fear, it's like the negativity and, you know, all this empty crap that these people use. It's just words that don't actually mean anything, but they think sound impressive. And I just like how he calls them out on that. He's like, you're not giving any of these people any real answers. And he's like, I'll give you answers. It's like, what? People are picking on you? Take some karate. Kick them in the balls.
Yeah.
It's like, you eat too much? Maybe eat less and exercise. You know, he's actually giving them some direct answers. And he's just like, I think you're the fucking Antichrist. Which is awesome.
Tony Curtis type character. Is that right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, on the lifeline. I love that. Fear and love is the lifeline. This weird thing, yeah. But yeah, I would have been saying a lot of the same things. I'd just be like, well, the spectrum of human emotion, you're ignoring it all. It's like life isn't that simple, you know? And it's kind of stupid to try to teach us that it is. But yeah. So he's relatable in a lot of ways, and he's really weird in a lot of ways. Like, he's definitely rebellious in a way that maybe some of us wish we could have been or could be and stuff. And you almost get the feeling too that he sort of knows he's on borrowed or extra time, so he might as well just say whatever he wants and do whatever he wants, which I like. But he doesn't necessarily go nuts with it. He's still a caring person, and he still, you know, wants to help good people, and he cares about his family and stuff. And I don't know. There's just a lot of things going on. I just like, from the time the movie starts to the time it ends, there's just so many cool changes in how we see the world, and his weird, even from like his neighborhood, which, you know, seems sort of pristine and Stepford-esque and stuff, and like we see that sort of unravel as the movie goes forward. You know, it's one of those movies that shows us sort of a dark underbelly. And honestly, and this isn't just an excuse so I can pick on something, but honestly, I know part of it's just me being weird. Because, you know, there's an easier way to do it without having all this, you know, time travel, existential stuff, sci-fi stuff in it. But honestly, I feel like what I just said, the stuff about stripping away the layers underneath society, blah, blah, showing, you know, some of the dysfunction and stuff that people try to hide. Like, that's a big thing that everybody really likes about American Beauty, which is a movie I famously loathe. And I feel like this is another thing where American Beauty, here's another movie that's outdoing American Beauty at something, and I feel like this one is, even though it's an odd sort of comparison. Because people love to say about, like, well, the whole point of one of the big themes of American Beauty, yeah, is like how people try to, like, on the surface, maintain a certain image to the world, and this is okay, and that's okay, but there's all these problems underneath, and there's all this deeper stuff going on, et cetera, et cetera. I know that's what American Beauty does. I just like this movie does a better job of it in a more interesting fashion.
Yeah, we should do a show on American Beauty at some point.
I'd hate to watch it again, but I'll do it. Makes me sad, because I like Kevin
Spacey
a lot. It makes me sad seeing him in that movie. The other actors, I don't give a shit, but Sonny, Thora Birch was another one of those people that I mentioned earlier in the movie, where it's just like she could only work as a teenager. Once when she got older, there was no use for her anymore.
Yeah. She just did a lot of lower budget type movies, unfortunately.
Yeah. You knew her career was over when she showed up like in a Limp Bizkit video. It's like, wow, this is where you've ended up.
She was really odd, like physically too, because it was kind of like the way Christina Ricci was for a little while. But she's still kind of like this. But like Thora Birch has got like gigantic breasts and like a really, really small body, like naturally. I just don't think it plays well on screen in like legitimate, you know, acting roles. I mean, not me personally. I just think that's the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's the way
may look at it.
No, they do. They do look at all that stuff, you know.
I mean, because, you know, she was a little thicker when she was younger, and it didn't stand out as much, I don't think.
Right.
But
I mean, it was even kind of like one thing I'll give American Beauty credit for is they sort of do a compare and contrast with it, because they have like a topless scene with her where it's like contrasting her to the blonde who's like this bombshell. This is like, well, this is more ordinary American girl, you know, she's not necessarily skinny and stuff, although it could be thrown off because her breasts are larger and stuff, and you know, there's I guess if you really wanted to make a point, it'd be somebody with smaller breasts, considering, it's a big deal for a lot of girls and women in society. They're growing up and they have small breasts, and they're like, oh, I wish I had bigger breasts because of blah, blah, blah and stuff. So I guess it doesn't work on that. But still, like you said, like she wasn't, just some skinny model-esque type figure and stuff. And it seemed like they were doing a contrast there where they show her standing in the window topless.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I get that. I'm not saying everything that movie did is a disaster, but I'm never going to change my mind on it. That's for sure.
You're not a fan of the garbage bag?
I feel the same way they did in that Family Guy joke. I love that. You see the Family Guy joke for that, where it's just like he's
on a leash or something at one point.
He's like filming the bag going around. He's like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's dancing with me. Somehow it makes me feel like God's telling me that everything's going to be all right. And then God's up in heaven on a cloud yelling at me. He's like, it's just some trash blowing in the wind. Do you have any idea how complicated your circulatory system is?
That's funny.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. Anyway, I could go off on a tangent about stuff like that, but I won't.
I'm sure there's plenty of people think, like, coming from somebody like me, it's sort of the height of hypocrisy for me to, like, take down American Beauty by calling it really pretentious and stuff, because there's plenty of movies out there that I know other people would view as pretentious, and I don't really have a defense for that. It's just like, okay, it's a different kind of pretentious then. It's not a pretentious I like. There's pretentious I like, and there's pretentious I don't like.
Did it win the Oscar that year?
I think so.
Yeah, it was close if it didn't. But
it was a huge deal. It was a big, big deal.
I mean, I like the movie. I think it's a little overrated. I really like the dynamic between Kevin Spacey and his wife more than anything else in the movie. I just think it's so funny, their relationship when they're both going through their midlife crisis at the same time.
Yeah, it won Best Picture, Best Director. Spacey won Best Actor, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Cinematography. It just dominated 99 Oscars.
Wow.
And honestly, that's not part of my backlash for it, because I don't care what movie wins what. It doesn't matter to me. So it's not like I'm mad that it won all those awards. I don't care.
I mean, what else was going on in 99? The Matrix?
Matrix. That's the main movie that comes to mind for me from 1999, even though it's not even my favorite of 99. There's a lot of good movies in 99, but as far as, like, being big things, American Beauty and The Matrix were, like, the big things that, like, people were, like, talking about. But yeah, this movie came from 2001, which is people who've seen our other show. I've revealed is my favorite year in film, and this is a big reason why. This is a big contributor. Is Donnie Darko? It's one of the top 10. That's really, as I said, when I looked at my favorite year in film, 2001. It's not one where I can name about 30 really great ones, but I can name 10 really great ones, and that's kind of enough. And this is one of them for sure. But The Green Mile was kind of a big deal in 1999.
Yeah, I think that's another one's a little overrated.
The South Park movie.
Yeah.
The Sixth Sense was sort of a phenomenon. And of course, episode 1. 99 was a really big year for big movies. But I'll take 2001 over it. And this is a big reason why. It was our second movie for 2001. We did Artificial Intelligence 2001, which was one of the big events of 2001, but one that never registered for me. As I said, there were several 2001 movies that were big deals. AI, Cinderella Man was another one.
Training Day.
Sorry, yeah, no, it's not Cinderella Man. The other one that he did.
Beautiful Mind.
A Beautiful Mind. A Beautiful Mind, Training Day. Like, I don't dislike any of those movies, but I don't feel strongly either. Those were not the big 2001 ones for me.
I've seen a lot of shit movies in this year too, man. Like the Planet of the Apes, Tim Burton.
Oh, that's right.
But you've got Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, that's one of my big
Harry Potter movies.
Amelie.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, the first one, Amelie, is a big one for me. Believe it or not, 2001. This is how long it's been going. 2001 is when the first Fast and the Furious movie came out. Would anybody have thought that all these years later they'd still be making them? I don't think so. That's like the only one I've seen all the way through. All the sequels I've seen like bits and pieces of on TV. The only one I've seen start to finish is the first one. And the first one was about car racing, street racing. And the movies got away from that really fast. But yeah, there's definitely some bombs going on in 2001. Planet of the Apes, like you said, Jurassic Park 3, Pearl Harbor.
I think Pearl Harbor did okay, though.
Yeah, when I say bombs, I just mean critical. Pearl Harbor did do okay. Jurassic Park 3 did okay. Made over $300 million. Just because of the name, but I just mean as far as like being a big disappointment, right? Like, But yeah, Amelie is one of my favorites from there.
Yeah, mine too.
I don't love Hannibal, but I still like Hannibal.
That's generally a big discussion with people, versus Red Dragon.
Yeah. I'll
Hannibal or
definitely
Red
take Red
Dragon.
Dragon over. I'll definitely take Red Dragon over. But I mean, I also like that's just from the book too. I love Red Dragon the book. I really love Red Dragon, and I really love Silence of the Lambs. The ones after that are still well written books, but I don't like as much. I like the earlier stuff.
How do you
And it's
feel
just
about Manhunter?
I love Manhunter too. Actually, I like Red Dragon and Manhunter almost equally. I'll take Red Dragon a little
Really?
over it, but
Wow.
I really enjoy both films. That's a very rare case where you have two versions of the same thing, and I really think both have a lot of good things going for them. I think they're both really good. I do take Red Dragon over it a bit because it has Ed Norton, who I like so much, and because you do get to see Anthony Hopkins.
I think Emily Watson's in that one too, isn't she?
Yeah, she's the blind woman.
Yeah, she does a great job.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah,
But that's a movie I haven't watched it recently, but honestly, I've seen Red Dragon like 15 times probably. It's a movie I constantly just like throw on and put on while I do stuff. I just like the familiarity. Same thing with the book. I've read the book like 15 times. I don't know why. Sometimes I just like the familiarity of things and I just repeat them. And Red Dragon's definitely one of those. So yeah, actually, I need to see Manhunter more. I mean, I've seen Manhunter a few times, but I'd like to own it. It's definitely worth owning.
I need to go back and revisit it. I didn't particularly like it. I think I may have seen it a time or two.
My main problem with it was just some of the casting wasn't very good.
Yeah, it's
for some reason it feels like sometimes it feels like the lines are rushed, especially if you watch those back to back. Like if you can remember like everything like Ralph Fiennes is saying in Red Dragon and stuff, and the bravado and the crazy, like the guy that who is that guy? The big tall guy. He's in a lot of stuff. He's the guy that plays the Red Dragon in that. Is it like Noonan?
Oh, Tom Noonan?
Yeah, Tom Noonan. So Tom Noonan plays Dollar Hyde in that. And he's like right in a lot of ways. He's not bad casting because he's a big, tall, and imposing guy. He's plays like all sorts of killers and monsters in movies. It makes sense. But I hate the way he delivers his lines in that movie. Mm-hmm. And it seems rushed. Like that whole part where like he's got Lowndes and he's like saying so like in the other he's just like, Mr. Lowndes, you are nothing. He's like, you're an ant in the afterbirth. He's like, but fear and before me you rightly tremble. But fear is not what you owe me, Mr. Lowndes. But beat. You owe bleeds down. You owe me awe. All that is so rushed and crappy when Noonan does it. He's just like, you're an ant in the afterbirth. Blah, 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 blah. Like he doesn't. There's no beats. There's no pauses. He just sort of, and he doesn't really raise his voice or anything. Like I know you could say, oh, he's overacting, but he's not because he's being like this crazy guy that's like delusion, talking about his becoming and all this. That's where you do overact a little. And Tom Noonan's just sort of going blah 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 blah. And so I have a lot of problem with that. And he's not even the only one. He's the biggest one. But yeah, if you watch those movies like back to back, you'll notice that like where there's like dramatic pauses and beats and changes of inflection in a lot of the dialogue in Red Dragon, it's just sort of like a steady monotone in the Manhunter. I still enjoy Manhunter, but yeah, that's one of the things that I really notice is like the actors. I don't understand why they deliver their lines in such sort of a flat monotone and much too fast way. Like they're not pausing. I mean, of course, anybody can overuse the dramatic pause and turn a scene into like something really stupid. I realize that, but this had like none. It's just them just going blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. I'm not particularly a fan. I'm looking at Michael Mann's work, and
I know
I really just don't like a lot of his movies.
My friend Pizzel's a big Michael Mann fan. I mean, certainly Heat is a masterpiece. I certainly agree with that, but I think he's just sort of done the same thing. I think Thief is so overrated.
It's my favorite movie he's done, I think.
Really? I like Thief, but it sort of washed over me. I didn't care that much about it.
I mean,
and I think a lot of that had to do with James Caan. I think I said this before on another show. I don't buy James Caan as that character. Like, he's supposed to be tough. He's supposed to, like, intimidate people, and I don't buy it. Like, him punching people out and, like, saying tough stuff. Like, I don't buy it at all.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Not really to add. I mean, more or less I can just, sum up some of the things we said. I think it's a really cool movie in that it's still unique to this day. You know, in this day of like remakes and sequels and big franchises based on this and that, it's you know, a nice little sort of refreshing movie based on an original idea. Good cast, well executed. Really not. It wasn't intentionally done to be this great period piece, but it comes off as a really good period piece for the late '80s, I think. And again, if you're somebody like me that kind of winces at a lot of that '80s soundtrack stuff, this is more in my wheelhouse. The music they chose for it really fits, and I think it fits the movie too. It's not just my own sensibilities; it just happens to fit the movie. Jake Gyllenhaal, Jenna Malone had good chemistry. Jenna Malone's always, probably well into her 20s, played a very convincing teenager. Like, because 3 years later, she would do it again in Saved, and she didn't look or seem any older than that.
Yeah.
You know, I talked about that a bit when you were off before.
Jeez.
But Patrick Fugit, yeah, that's the guy I couldn't remember, but he's the other guy, and they're in Saved together. And I just think of them both eternally as teenagers. I can't see them as grown-up people because for me, their definitive roles were as teenagers. Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal's had an interesting career arc. He certainly had some crappy movies and things, but he's more or less an A-list star, and you can't say he's just done safe roles. He's done some interesting things. I mean, I don't love Nightcrawler, but I like it. He's very cool in it. Did you see Nightcrawler?
I love Nightcrawler, man.
Yeah, I think he's really good in that movie. I think it's a cool movie.
Yeah, I was going to mention Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he's really come into his own as an actor, I think, in recent years.
Exactly. Like I said, as he hit like A-list, he could have like chosen, you know, more simple and boring roles and stuff. And I think he's still gone out of his way to get, you know, interesting stuff. You know, be an actor, not be, here's, you know, kind of what Tom Cruise does, you know.
Right.
Tom Cruise in this, Tom Cruise in that, and it's always just sort of Tom Cruise. In this, Jake Gyllenhaal will actually become a character. I'm not saying he's like some sort of chameleon. He's not Gary Oldman, but still, I mean, more so than a lot of these, you know, like guys in this age group that can be sort of a leading man type. I think he really is, you know, taking.
Well, I think that he's reached a point in his career when he can pick and choose, as opposed to taking the money gigs.
Yeah. Now, did you see Nocturnal Animals? Because that's one I really want to see, and I haven't seen it. A lot of people say it was really good. You thought it was good. Okay, that's good because I'm really interested in seeing that. That seems like another cool choice by him.
I mean, I liked Enemy. I liked Prisoners.
I liked Prisoners. I liked Prisoners a lot. I know you like End of Watch. I don't like End of Watch, but I like Love and Other Drugs.
Another one he did recently with the same director as Enemy was Demolition, which was really good.
Okay, yeah, I know what that is, but I haven't seen it. Got a bunch of stuff in the works too. I'm looking at his page here.
I mean, yeah, I was looking, and you know, he did like Prince of Persia, shit like that, which is just garbage. But you know, he was just trying to get paid. You know.
Yeah, I get that.
You got to do what you got to do, you know, to be a working actor.
So. Of course, he's really, and I mean, I don't think this is his greatest role, but the one you know everybody will harp on is his role in Brokeback Mountain. I mean, yeah, it's definitely good. I don't know. People always have to act like. Even today, even in 2017, that it's like so amazing for like a straight actor to play a gay character. What a huge risk it is, and I don't, you know, come on, man. Well, yeah, mostly we have gay actors that constantly have to play straight people, and we don't bat an eye for them. So why should the other, you know, why should we applaud them?
You probably have plenty of gay actors that are not out yet that you would never know.
And they're constantly, you know, being cast as like, you know, heterosexual, you know, romantic leads and stuff, and you know, and they're doing a fine job of it. You know,
I mean, a good example is Neil Patrick Harris. You know, played like the uber masculine dude on How I Met Your Mother.
Sure, right.
And you know, he does a great job. Still does a lot of roles where he plays a straight man.
Yeah. This isn't a great example, but I mean, it's okay. I recently saw him do that in A Million Ways to Die in the West, which I actually liked. I thought that was cool.
Really?
I liked A Million Ways to Die.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I think it was like great or anything.
That's shocking to hear you say that.
I haven't seen it. I mostly like Seth MacFarlane. It's not like he's done much I dislike. Like, I'm not a huge Family Guy fan, but I like it. I actually like American Dad more than Family Guy. I liked it because it's more wacky. Mm-hmm. I like Ted. The sequel wasn't very good, as a lot of people know, but no. I mean, I mostly like him. I think his humor mostly works for me. Not everything, but yeah.
I don't particularly like him as an actor.
No, and I mean, it's not really a problem in something like 1,000 Ways to Die in the West, because like to me it's completely appropriate. It's just sort of him. It's just basically Seth MacFarlane if he stuck his now 21st century version of himself in the Wild West. I mean, that's more or less the character you get, because they're always like pointing out things that like nobody from the time period would point out, because that's the whole point. It's like he has like some sort of like clarity, because he even says like this is a horrible time to live. Like I don't know. It's no comedy classic or anything, but I liked it. I think it bombed in theaters, but I liked it.
Bombed hard.
Yeah, but anyway, Neil Patrick Harris is in that, and I think he's funny in that. And he's like
Really?
he's the guy that like steals his girlfriend at the beginning. His girlfriend leaves him and starts dating Neil Patrick Harris, who's like this like rich snobby guy with a mustache, and it's funny. I don't know. I think it's worth a watch. I don't know.
I'll check it out.
I remember people saying like it was full of like racism, like barely any. Like the closest racism, yeah, there's some stuff about like Native American stuff, but I don't even think it's that far. It's more like poking fun at themselves, really. It's not like bad. Because a lot of people are like, I don't know, it's just too racist for my taste. I don't know, man.
Watch any movie with Native Americans in it from the past 50 years, and it's racist.
Yeah, like which ones actually were, positive. Pick which ones were. Like it's very few. Because it's the same thing as we said when we were talking about, if you're like a gay actor or something like that. Like it just takes so long for the roles to just catch up and actually, be normal and not like have that be the whole focus. Like I like Adam Beach is a great actor, but he just has to spend his career being the Indian guy. Like that's it. And it's too bad because you know what? You could make plenty of roles for him where he just happens to be Indian and not, make it a plot point.
Exactly,
yeah, not make it a plot point and not make it a big deal, And he can do that. He's a good actor. I like Adam Beach.
I do too. He was in Windtalkers, right?
Yeah. If he was in a movie with Indians, there he was as one of the Indian guys.
I've seen a few of his. He was in a documentary I watched. He's a Canadian actor, right?
Yeah. It's from I think Manitoba.
Real Engine is the name of it. Really good documentary on Native Americans in film, and
he's from Manitoba.
Talk about a lot of that type stuff. It's really interesting. It turned me on to a lot of films I've seen since, like Smoke Signals, like written, directed, starring real Indians.
Yeah, if you want to see a really good movie that has him, and it's one of
he's in that too.
Yeah, that has him and is really good, and it's about Indians, but like it's actually like done in a way that's like not a bunch of stereotypical bullshit. It's one of his first movies. It's called Dancing Outside. It's a Canadian film about basically young people living on a reservation in Canada and sort of what their lives are like and stuff. It's by director Bruce McDonald, who I've mentioned before because he did a couple years later the very famous mockumentary Hardcore Logo, which I think you would definitely get a kick out of too. But it's weird. Like I recently watched like some awful movie just because he directed it, but it was like a terrible thing. What was it? Oh, Hellions. I watched this movie Hellions just because he directed it. And it's this horrible, awful, low budget horror thing. Don't watch it. I watched it because he directed it, but yeah, got nothing to do with him. Like he might have directed it, but it has nothing. But yeah, he's a good director. But definitely his early stuff was the best stuff. And yeah, Dance Me Outside and Hardcore Logo were the two big ones for sure. I really need to see Dance Me Outside again. I haven't seen it in so long, but it constantly has gotten praise from like actual like Indians saying this is a good representation of what life is actually like for us and stuff like that, like modern life. It's pretty cool. But yeah, and Adam Beach, that's one of his like first like main roles.
That's really interesting. That's a good documentary. I'd say check that out.
Yeah, I've seen the title before. I'll look for it.
He's one of the main guys in it. So, I was trying to think. Flags of Our Fathers, I think, was the one where. I saw that. Is that the film where he has to play like he has a drinking problem?
I can't remember his character, to tell you the truth, but I've seen Flags of Our Fathers. It's like
he has a real.
It's like the story behind that Iwo Jima picture of them all putting the flag down. It's like what their lives were really like, which is pretty interesting.
One of the Eastwood flicks around that period of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's real big on like not playing a character that is a drunk. Or no, I'm sorry. In real life, he doesn't ever drink in public. Because the stereotype.
Yeah, sure. I think that is kind of a plot point in Dance Me Outside, because that is a thing. I'm sure. I think it's the same in American reservations, in Canadian reservations, as there is a lot of alcoholism.
I mean, what kind of cross is that to bear? Like, I mean, I think every culture in the world has a history of alcoholism. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
What are you? Irish? What are you? Italian? I mean, Asian. Everybody drinks lots and lots of alcohol. It's just human nature. Every race, every creed.
Very true.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel bad that he has to carry that around with him.
Yeah, I think that's going a little far, but I mean, he can do whatever he wants, of course.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure it is true that he is a role model in a lot of ways for people. And yeah, and at least he does take it seriously, I suppose.
Yeah. I just think it got to be rough for somebody to be carrying that around with him. Like it's his responsibility to. Because I mean, I'm not gonna, oh, you're, Native American. Obviously, you have a drinking problem.
Yeah, right.
I'm not gonna make some sort of, accusation like that, but assumption of. But anyway,
my main assumption is that they're always late.
Yeah.
I mean. I can't help it. I mean, they even joke about it. Like one of the lawyers my dad works with, like that and stuff. Like he often makes jokes about, and of course he can because he is Indian and stuff, about like they're being on their own time and stuff. Like there was a kid I went to school with, like literally, like the school like would like call his house and stuff and be like, "You're supposed to be at school now," because he used to like just sort of come in whenever, and that was just how they did things in his house. And again, I know that's not for everybody, but it's the big stereotype, and at least I've seen it in action in my own life, where that you're saying something's at 7 o'clock. They're just like, okay, well, whenever. No, it's at 7. It starts at 7. Well,
I'll see you when I see you.
Well, yeah, I'll see you when I see you. So, I don't know, man. Maybe they're right. Maybe we shouldn't be so, I don't know.
Yes, I mean it would be great, but
we never
have watches
on time, for God's sake.
Yeah,
that's our calling card for the show. Never starting on time. But anyway, yeah, I guess we're done here. Yeah, little segue. We did our fantasy, and this is kind of fantasy thing. I think getting into some more heavy concept and surrealism stuff, which sets us up nicely, I think, because we were going to do a David Lynch movie, I think, next.
Sure.
Again, sort of tentative, but we'll confirm it for sure the next couple of days. But I think we're looking at Mulholland Drive for next week, which is actually my favorite David Lynch movie. I think it's beautiful, but don't ask me to explain it, because like a lot of the Lynch ones, there's not really any real answer for it too. And there's stuff in there that he, admits he just sort of threw in because he thought it was amusing or interesting, but didn't necessarily mean anything. And I haven't seen it in quite a while, so I'm excited to see it again too. So I think that's what we're looking at for next week. In the next couple of days, we'll confirm that for you guys, so And after that, we'll go in some other direction. But yeah, we're gonna go right through the summer and stuff. No break. We're gonna do this as regularly as we can. So hope you guys will be there with us the whole way.
Hopefully, I won't be sick.
Yeah, well, if people get sick, whatever, But like I said, we'll
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But all right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, comments, recommendations, whatever, tweet to us or leave your comment down below. Whatever you'd like to do. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Pocket Dimension. See you next week. Later.